Hello, everyone. Welcome. Sunday Speedrunner Spotlight, best show on Twitch, definitely. That's all the critics say. Um, so today we're featuring potentially shitty internet, and if that works out, we'll have YELSRAEK on screen. How's it going?
It's going pretty well, GTAs. How are you?
I'm fine. It's a nice
Excellent.
Sunday afternoon, seems
Yeah,
like.
it's lovely so far. A little
Yeah.
windy over here, but we'll see how it goes.
Good day to sit inside and talk about speedrunning instead of being out there.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So, why don't you introduce yourself?
So my name is YELSRAEK. I'm a partner on Twitch, focused entirely on speedrunning, primarily NES games, occasionally Super NES games. Very rarely like a stray Genesis game or an arcade game if, one gets found after being away for 30 years, that sort of thing. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I've been speedrunning since 2016 and yeah, I have held into different degrees various world records across the NES and Super NES platforms. Um, and been on GDQs every now and again. I've hosted events here and there. Yeah, it's kind of a jack of all, master of I guess one or two.
That defines as all trades, right? Like two. That's
Yeah,
all. Yeah, that's all.
I mean, who need you don't really need more than one or two
Exactly.
realistically. So
That's all you need. All right. Well, I'm glad to have you on the show. So, I guess we can start off by what got you into speedrunning.
so speedrunning like runs in my family in a matter of different ways. Like well before I actually became a speedrunner, so to speak, like officially with my own stream and stuff. Like I started streaming in 2016 to do speedrunning, but my brother Chester, he's an old SDA guy, so like
Mm.
like he had a speed demos archive. His first speed demos archive post is from like 2006.
Wow.
And at that point, uh, there was he was mentioned because he had already posted a time uh, for a Final Fantasy Tactics run on GameFAQs from like months prior to that. So it's like he's been in and around this stuff for a long, long time. In the There was a window of time, probably like I don't know, like 12 years or so, where Guinness was working with like various video game records. Like they had their own book that they would release annually. That was like the Guinness Book of World Record video game,
Mm-hmm.
or like video game world records. My brother is in the first one.
Oh, wow.
He's in the first edition for Final Fantasy Tactics. So that's where like my original introduction to it came in. So it
Mm.
was like back in the SDA days where you were literally like recording runs on VHS or like using like some sort of DVD recorder to capture your runs, and then if you didn't have a strong enough computer, because lots of people didn't back then, you would literally mail the stuff to one of the admins at SDA and they would rip it and post it online.
Mm-hmm.
um but yeah, it was that's where it all comes back. And I was just thinking about this because I hadn't thought about it before. But the first time that I ever did a speed run, I didn't really know that I was doing a speed run.
Mm.
Um, and it was effectively a co-op run. My college roommate and I decided, after we were done with finals, but neither of us were going home for a little bit, we decided that we wanted to see if we could beat Final Fantasy VII in one sitting.
Mm.
So we played the game in 2 hour shifts, and it took like 21 and a half hours or so, but we did it. Um, and I have the proof. Like I've got
Oh,
four
wow.
VHS tapes because they're all like 6 hours a piece. So I got two more down there. Um, that like the quality is awful, and I don't
As you'd
mean the
expect.
gameplay. Yeah, but yeah, like this sort of thing. When it comes to like speedrunning is just a way to challenge yourself, and like that was just like a fun challenge that we came up with because we had just time to spare, and it was like, oh, this seems like a fun thing to do. So really, like it goes. That was 2000, I think.
Wow.
Like yeah. So
I was 1 year old. I don't know if you want to hear that, but it's true.
No, it's okay. It's all right. It's like I'm coming to terms with my age
I
slowly as time goes on. So
feel like everyone I've had on so far is like at least a decade older than me. I
Well,
guess that's just how it works.
I nearly have two on you.
Mm,
But that's okay.
maybe, but we don't need to get into that.
That's fine.
That's fine. That's fine. So, when did it become legit? Because that was like the first one, but I'm sure it was years and years after that that you actually
Right,
started because you said
definitely.
2016.
Yeah. So like, so my brother had been doing it for ages, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
be perfectly honest, I wasn't particularly interested. Like, it was interesting,
Mm-hmm.
but like I was doing other things. I think if I go back to like 2006, I was probably more interested in playing Guitar Hero than I was in like, watching speedruns of games or like the concept of speedrunning or anything like that. I joined Twitch in 2013, specifically so that I could watch my brother because he had created a Twitch account and he was actually streaming his Final Fantasy Tactics runs and stuff. So, um, so I joined Twitch so I could see that, and then from there I kind of like branched out my viewership and stumbled, from my perspective, stumbled across folks like Darbian and I guess I should call him Orcus because it was Arcus, but like pre cowboy
Pre-cowboy, of
Arcus. Yeah,
course,
yeah.
yes.
So, well, watching him speedrun Ninja Gaiden and Toad 22484 and Ellipsis, but they were both playing Marble Madness at the time, and yeah, and even then I was just watching. I
Mm-hmm.
really enjoyed watching these old games, but I had like no real urge to give it a try myself. Weirdly enough, until in 2015, I have a coworker who he hasn't streamed in ages, but like he did it for a little while in like 2015, 2016, named Mr. Pizak, and he was the one, like I remember watching him one night like finish like play do runs of like Mickey Mouse Capade and Super Metroid, like, and it's just like watching him play that and I'm like, I think I could do this. Like, I really like it was only at that point that I really began to be like, I actually think that I could manage to do it, but I really wasn't confident in my own abilities at all. Like, I to this day I still contest that I'm not very good at video games. I'm just willing to put the time in.
Hmm.
Um
I don't know if I'd say that, but
but um but yeah, like I was so uncertain about whether or not I thought it would work out that my total investment to start streaming was $5. I wanted to play an NES game, so I wanted to play on a brick controller. I didn't have it. Inadvisedly, I had sold all of our, like, mine and my brother's NES and Super Nintendo and Genesis and Master System items on eBay back in 2013 when the market stunk.
hmm.
Because we were just like, we're never gonna need these anymore, and we sold it all. And like 5 years later, we're like, no.
What have you done?
Exactly. So, but like I didn't want to invest any unnecessary funds in my head. So I borrowed a controller from Mr. Pizak and I bought an NES to USB adapter on eBay. And he sat very patiently with me on a Skype call to put us back in time there. Not Discord, not Zoom, not any of the
Hey, I
Skype.
remember Skype, don't worry.
Yeah. Okay. Good. He sat very patiently with me on a Skype call for like an hour and a half to help me show me how to set up OBS and set up the emulator and capture everything. And yeah, and I thus I began my journey. So it was interesting because there was a window of time there where I had decided that I wanted to start speedrunning, but it literally took me 3 weeks to pick a game.
Mm.
I was like, I don't even know what I want to start with. So it was like, in the end, after hearing interviews of his later on, I feel like I ended up kind of stumbling into what is very illogical strategy. Ends up being it's the Darkwing Duck strategy,
Mm.
which is like he's like I like to play games that I played as a kid, that the controls are really crisp, that the music's really good, and like that's just like, oh, that's like the perfect three things. Because it's like in my head, I'm like I have to be prepared to hear these songs like thousands of times. And I don't want it to
Yep.
get old and like really get bothered by it. And yeah, I wanted something with really crisp and snappy controls, which is funny to me because I ended up picking River City Ransom as my first game. Which again, when it's not lagging, the controls are really good. But then the more you play it, and the more you get into the nuance of it, the less responsive the controls feel. Which is just kind of funny, really. So,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I started speedrunning in like on January 22nd of 2016. I
You got
remember
the
that
date.
because every year I have my stream
Mm-hmm.
anniversary, which I think I normally just like simulate Tecmo Super Bowl stuff that day, but that's okay. It's it's fun. So
What better way to celebrate?
exactly.
Yep. All right, 2016.
Yep.
Like I didn't start till 1 year later. I know a lot of people like joined in 2016 specifically. I wonder what like brought everyone in then.
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
Because it's
Because it's
before
not
summoning salt, and that's like what brings a lot of people in the more modern era. That's what brought me in. So it's like what brought
right.
people in back then?
So I have from a lot of different conversations that I've either had or heard from other folks, it definitely feels like folks that watched GDQs or they became
Mm-hmm.
aware of GDQ like back when it was still in like its 4-H days, and just to put a pin in that, like before GDQ was at like filling up a floor of a hotel and
Mm-hmm.
like booking all the rooms out. They were in Virginia at a 4-H at a 4-H club, and they just had like a tiny little room that had like 25, 30 seats in it. And it's like what people refer to as the old days when it was like a much more intimate setting.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like it wasn't so polished, and like some people harken back to that as being better. I mean, it's different. It's not. I like them both. I like what it was, and I also like what it is. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of cool in both ways. But I have um, on hand uh, on hand accounts from like my brother who went and attended and like watched like the first time that what was it the first time that Zallard or Sinister tried to do blindfolded punch out. Like he's in the video. Like you
Oh,
can see him in
like
the
the first
background.
Sinister one? That was like
Yeah,
2014, I want
yeah,
to say.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
no, he did some things earlier, but the
Well,
big one with both of them was 2014,
yeah.
where
So but
Zallard
he
like
was
did Super Punch Out right after.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. I think you're right on the dates there. But like it's just again going back to like how
Mm-hmm.
far back. I mean, my brother was in the chat room watching CGDQ when it was live, like back in
Wow.
2010. Like it's like I've got this wonderful vantage point of like like man, I wish I had gotten into this 6 years earlier. But it's it's just how it was. I just
Mm-hmm.
wasn't focused on it at that moment. So um, but yeah, it's just really really fascinating to just see how the situation of how the community of speedrunning has grown. And I think from there, as it grew, it got to like around like that time 2013, 2014. There's like a specific run. I want to say it's Narcissa's run of OOT,
Mm.
where like everything was so well executed and so well explained at the same time. And it's just like that was like a foundational run that I know pulled a lot of people into speedrunning in general around that time. And so like it's kind of like 2016 is weird because it kind of feels like a dip between that and summoning salt.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you think about like some of the key focal points that really focused on speedrunning and brought people in. Like we're kind of in a lull there, so to speak. I mean, not really a lull. I mean, I guess it really depends on what games you're interested in. Because like, for me, I could sit and watch SMB1 any percent all day. I would never get bored of it. Like it's just it's mesmerizing. And so for me, I feel like that's a big part of it too, because that was right around Darbian's 456 times.
Mm-hmm.
When it was like grinding for 457, getting the first ever flagpole glitch in an attempt, and like the
Mm-hmm.
pop off, and then getting like, and then again, obviously the 456 pop off where he broke the
Broke the
camera.
camera. Yeah, of course.
Like those things, those stick with me, very much so. So it's I feel like if you were at least in like the retro speedrunning community, by retro, I mean, who knows what that means anymore, but like NES, Super NES era, like I feel like that was a really good time to be getting interested in it. you know and you had also, I mean, like for Super NES, you have like those epic Super Metroid races at GDQs over the years, and there's lots of little things that like they could all resonate with different people. I mean, heck, like Bonesaw's Jack and Daxter run from 2016 carries a lot of weight with people too for like different reasons entirely. But it made them think about speedrunning, and that's the point.
Of course, yeah.
So so yeah.
Yeah, it's
Um
interesting to think about because, I'm trying to think before my time. Like, I don't know much about it because I wasn't there. So it's like, what happened then?
mhm.
It's nice to like learn what it was like in the olden days, I guess.
Yeah, I mean it really is fascinating to think about. Yeah, the it's like the stereotypical but not stereotypical. It literally started in somebody's mom's basement
Mm-hmm.
and then it blew up into something really magical. Now, I mean, again, the whole mom's basement thing was a solution to a problem, and the problem was Magfest's horrible internet connection.
I
But
relate.
yeah, uh, yeah, some things are eternal.
Except it's my parents' basement that has the bad internet, so I'm just screwed both ways.
Are you at least running Ethernet down there? I mean,
I
it's a
can't, no.
you gotta
Yeah,
get like
I know.
yeah.
I can't though. Not with the
Dang.
way the house is set up.
Oh, that stinks. Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
one of I'm not a big like DIY person at
Mm-hmm.
all,
Neither
but
am I.
one of my proudest moments is being able to run Ethernet cables through the house, not in any sort of professional way, but like to be able to run like 100-foot cables so that I could be wired, and then my wife's computer upstairs could also be wired at the same
Yeah, I've
time.
been told like, tape it to the ceiling, tape it to the walls, run it down, whatever, and I'm like, I can't. Trust me." It's on a different story of the house behind some doors. Like,
Yeah, I
also,
mean,
no one else would be okay with it.
I think that's probably the bigger stopping point more than
Maybe,
anything. It's
but
like you don't have the agency in the house to be able to like, you know what? I'm gonna put some holes in the wall, okay, guys? Like,
yep. Yeah, not quite up to me how that works.
exactly,
Maybe
exactly.
someday I can get a better setup, but as it stands now, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
so far I haven't dropped any frames. Now that I say that I will, but at the moment, we're doing all right.
we're doing fine. We're
Yeah,
doing
unlike
just fine.
Magfest,
Unlike Magfest,
of
a
course.
lovely segue back into
Yeah,
it too.
that,
That's good. I like it.
I'm a professional.
So yeah, so I started speedrunning in 2016. I focused on River City Ransom, and weirdly, one of those like weird timing issues, right? Well, not
Hmm.
issue, but it's just like a weird circumstance. Is that I ended up getting a little bit more visibility than I otherwise would have expected,
Hmm.
because um, I well, I decided to start speedrunning it, and then like 2 weeks after that, the Big 20 for that season was announced, and it was in it.
Oh, okay.
So it was just like really strange. So like, and I wasn't the world record holder at that time,
Hmm.
but I managed to get the world record like 2 days before the race.
Hmm.
So like when they got to that run, like you literally have like a VOD of Fiesel, who was a previous world record holder, and he was one of the folks on commentary for the race.
Hmm.
Having a conversation about me, which was really weird. Just like where I ended up just from watching other people's VODs and whatnot, I ended up adding a large time save to the run because there's nothing about the run that says you're not allowed to die. And just the way the mechanics of the game works, there are like basically there are four malls in the city, and moving sequentially from the beginning of the run to the end of the run. If you die in between two of the malls, you immediately just go back to the previous one, and the game is linear except for one boss fight. So you got to run past two malls and then beat the first guy. But then the second guy is way back between the first and second malls. So all the other runs that I had ever watched, they just picked up and ran back. And I'm like, well, why don't you just die? Like if you die, and it ended up being like a 45-second time save. Now, to put in perspective how poor my execution was, because I was so super duper nervous, I ended up getting the world record by 3 seconds. And I didn't know at the time that the time save was ultimately going to be 45 seconds. Because I look back at that run, and I'm like, man, this run is terrible. I fall down a bunch. I ran into a wall a couple times. It was off, but it was still, because of the massive time save in the front end of it, it was good enough to get world record by 3 seconds. And And it was just weird because, so, like, hearing this conversation about, oh, they just, like, we had considered the concept of a death war, but we didn't think it was viable because when you die, you lose half of your money, and the whole run kind of hinges on being able to buy one upgrade. And like we didn't really look into it enough, I guess, because didn't think it would work out uh, along the way. Like you'd get to a point where you could buy the thing, but you wouldn't have enough money to buy the thing, so never mind.
Mm-hmm.
um, but yeah, so like from there, it was just super neat. Like just like I got my first ever world record and was like, that's so cool. And then I immediately decided I wanted to try playing a different game.
I'm done with this. Moving on.
Exactly, I did it. Like mission accomplished, and we're just onward we go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so then I went back. I dug into my memories as a child. This one was a weird one because I don't remember if my brother and I actually had Magic Sword for the Super NES when we were growing up. But I do know that there was a convenience store walking distance down the street from my house, and they had an arcade cabinet tucked in the same alcove that like they had the ATM, and there was a Magic Sword cabinet there. And I remember dumping tons of quarters into that game and being terrible at it. And I feel like that memory brought me over to this SNES port, and I'm like, let me play this. And it didn't even have an SRC page, so like so there are no runs that I could conceive of that I could find anywhere. So it was my first experience in trying to route a game from scratch. Um, and again, in the same spirit of RCR, I think I did a terrible job, but I laid the groundwork for some other folks to come in and vastly improve it, which,
Mm-hmm.
again, sometime they might not have had the impetus to try, but upon seeing that I had put that out there, they're like, oh, well, I mean, I could fix that.
Mm-hmm.
That's terrible. That's bad. That's okay. That's bad. And I could fix all these things. So, you know, as it was, like I routed the game and I ran the game, and it's again, I talk about like snappy controls and good music and stuff, and this one again fit the bill, but again, it's another super laggy game. I don't know what my fascination with laggy games is. Um, so like the first time save that somebody found, like somebody posted a run that was like 2 minutes faster than my run. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder what they did. Literally, all they did was in Magic Sword, you can take an ally with you. You can like rescue an ally from like a jail cell, and then they can join you and they can help you fight stuff. He just didn't take one because the game's already laggy as heck. And if you add another sprite that has a projectile that goes off every single time you attack, he's like, "Oh yeah, it's terribly slow." And I was like, "Wow, that makes a lot of sense."
Yeah.
Like things that you just I was just focused on like, routing and like item usage and stuff, and wasn't really focused on like that specific nuance. I also wasn't focused on a nuance of like if you think about games like Ninja Gaiden where you stop moving if you have to attack.
Mm-hmm.
So you try to always attack while you're jumping so that it doesn't ruin your momentum. Magic Sword has that same thing, and I didn't really pick up on that either. Um, but fortunately, at that point, had of all runners that decided that they wanted to pick up the game, ProJN, who is an old Zelda 2 speedrunner. He's done Zelda 2 runs for GDQs back in the day multiple times. He picked up Magic Sword and he like grinded the heck out of it for over like the summer and into the early fall. Um, and he brought it down more minutes. Likewise, like while he was doing that, I had actually returned back to River City Ransom because another Swede, because ProJN is a Swede, and so is Nisa is also a Swede. And Nisa, I believe nowadays, he's been shattering the Maniac Mansion world record over and over and over
The
again as
NES
new
one.
strats have come. Yeah, the NES Maniac
Okay.
Mansion. Like, yeah, as new strats have come out and been discovered by a really cool like human theory tassing community. Like you've got she's Shardcore who has like over 1,000 world records in a
Yep.
variety of different games, although she doesn't stream anymore due to her health. She shifted to tassing for like a year, and she knocked out like 70 tasses in a year because she's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And but one of the games that she always focuses on, and there's like a group of folks in her Discord that also focus on, is Maniac Mansion. So it was always interesting to me because I would look at the Discord like every other day. I would see like conversations going on as they're like trying to figure stuff out, and then they figure it out and they kind of like put it out there that this is something that can work, and then Nisa just like grinds it out and like knocks out the strats in real time, and it's just so cool to see. Like I love that community aspect
Mm-hmm.
about the speedrunning community in general. That sort of thing. Like if you figure out a strat, you don't just like sit on it. You just say like, hey, maybe this is useful, and you just go out with it and just try to figure out if somebody can execute it well.
Yeah.
Um, I've always liked that. But yeah, so I was grinding River City Ransom with Nisa because he apparently really liked the game when he was growing up, and he um, was again he just showing better execution. He changed the route slightly for like when you buy the punch upgrade. That is the only thing you need to buy, because I thought I needed to go further into the game before I could afford it, but he showed that depending on the money routing, you could get it a little bit earlier, and his execution was a bit tighter. So, um, like when I first got the world record in River City Ransom, it was 7:36. By the summertime, Nisa had brought it down under 7 minutes. So like he was fully taking advantage of that 45-second time
Mm-hmm.
save, where like I had given most of it back, but saved just enough to get world record, and he was the first one to get sub 7. Like the same day he had a 6:58, and like the same day I got 6:59, he got 6:52.
Hmm.
I was like, dang, I can't keep up with this guy. But I kept grinding, and then it was at that point that I introduced a new obstacle, because I have a habit of accidentally including obstacles as I speedrun. Don't
Hmm.
know why. Yeah, absent-mindedly so. Um, at this point, like as the summer went on, I started to have conversations with my brother about potentially attending AGDQ 2017 and submitting runs to it as well. And again, up to this point, I had still only done that $5 investment. Or I guess at this point maybe it was like $20 investment. I had to buy a SNES to USB adapter so that I
Hmm.
could play Magic Sword as well. But I was like, oh man, so GDQ only accepts runs that are on console, right? So I need to get a console. So I went out. I purchased an NES. I purchased a Super NES, but I didn't purchase a CRT.
Mm.
And I was like, it should be fine. Like I knowing nothing, right? Knowing
Oh,
nothing, asking
little
no
did
one.
you know.
Little did I know. So I'm like, yeah, because I didn't feel like I had a lot of room in
Mm-hmm.
like the way my corner over here was configured before. I was just like, oh, I don't want to like clutter it up with like some big CRT, so I won't. No, we'll just figure this out. So what I ended up doing was I was playing the games in the capture in OBS,
Mm.
which when I did the math later, once I finally jump forward, sneak forward ahead a little bit, I did end up buying a CRT.
Mm-hmm.
But uh, it ended up introducing like zero point 0.2 seconds of lag, so
Oh
like
my god.
12 frames of lag
Mm-hmm.
for inputs. Which it really led me down the path to think that there are certain patterns in River City Ransom that will just kill you. And then it wasn't until I got a CRT, or like until I was in front of a CRT, I was like, oh, you can react to those. Oh,
Mm.
neat. Okay, cool. um, so yeah, so I was doing that, and it was a really long grind, but ultimately I managed to get like 650 in River City Ransom, literally right before the Best of NES marathon was about to kick off in 2016, and that was it. Back in that time, like they were literally just, we open up this marathon specifically to world record holders. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe we'll take second place, but probably not back then. And that was just the style. That was
Mm-hmm.
just what they did. Like
It's the
I'm not
best
cast
of the NES.
like,
Yeah.
literally the name.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. It's in the name. So like I'm not casting aspersions. It was
Mm-hmm.
literally just the format. So I was like I kind of stumbled upon um that specific marathon. So I was like, oh well, I'll submit RCR to it since I have the world record. Sure, why not? So like I submitted to that, and then like a week or two later, I submitted to GDQ. I submitted River City Ransom, and I submitted Magic Sword. And to my astonishment, both runs got in,
Hmm.
which is just like I wasn't expecting that at all. I wasn't expecting either run to get in. I was expecting to go to AGDQ 2017 and experience the event and just see what it was like to be there, because like that looked like a lot of fun. And now all of a sudden, I'm running 2 games. Cool, I think. Like okay, let's do this. And then I mentioned the Best of NES marathon specifically because that helped me so much. Because that I ran River City Ransom for the Best of NES 2016 marathon, and it was terrible.
Mm.
It was so bad, and it reminded me of that. There's more to marathon speedrunning, much more than there is to speedrunning. Like, I hadn't taken any precautions. I didn't practice backups. I didn't figure out, like, well, what happens if you don't have that weapon anymore? How do you beat this boss with some other weapon? And like, usually I just reset. Like, oh, you
Mm-hmm.
can't reset though. Like,
No.
so, but like, and it was awful. Like, I finally got the upgrade that I wanted, like at my estimate. So I was like 3 or 4 minutes over estimate by the end of the run. It was really bad.
Mm.
But it reminded me, like, it was a learning experience, and I'm very happy to have learned it on in that setting than on stage.
Mm-hmm.
So so that happened, and that was really important, a really important point for me as well. Also, like, right before I left for GDQ, I finally caught up to Pro JN and took the Magic Sword world record back with like a 23:09. Like, back when I first routed the game, it was like 28 minutes. And like, so, like, just to put a pin in just exactly how much time was knocked off by a couple of like important discoveries and like better execution. Um, but so I was doing a solo run of RCR, and then I was racing Magic Sword with Pro JN. Those are the two runs that got in.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to AGDQ 2017, and I the first day I was there, like, my commentators for River City Ransom were going to be Ellipsis, who, the Marble Madness veteran,
Mm-hmm.
and Endy. Endy, you know, being another Swede, another Swede of speed that again, had a lot of familiarity with River City Ransom. I think he did like commentary for Nissa's like ESA run of River City Ransom over the summertime. So like, he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm happy to help out. Real familiar with it, everything." And I was happy to have him on. So I get to GDQ, and like, I'm just like talking to Andy in the lobby, and I casually mention what my setup is at home. And the Jackie Chan meme where he's just like, he's got his hands like here,
Oh yeah,
and he's
yeah.
like, yeah. So that was Endy's response
Mm-hmm.
when I told him what my setup was at home. It's like, there were no words came out of his mouth. It was just like, it was that for like 10 seconds. He turned, like, put his head against the wall, and then he turned back to me. He's like, "I strongly recommend you go into the practice room as soon as it opens tomorrow. When's your first run?" And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh,
Yeah.
Magic Sword is on Monday morning." So it's like, it's Saturday night. And
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, you need to go in there ASAP."
Mm-hmm.
And I did. I was like, "Holy crap, this is so different." The
Mm-hmm.
timing for all of my jumps was off. I was like falling into pits left and right. I was like a dead panic for like the first like 36 hours or so. I spent so much time practicing, and like, I had to like switch from doing like well-timed jumps to literally just like mashing jump, because as
Mm-hmm.
early as I think is necessary to make sure that I don't fall off, because I had all my muscle memory was just shattered at
Mm-hmm.
that point. Um, which ended up being a boon in the end, because I don't think I would have practiced as hard in the hours leading up to the run as I did there. And I ended up having like probably one of the cleanest runs I had had to date, because I was just so focused on my timing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I didn't win the race. That's a trend. I don't win races. I've noticed by and large. Um, but yeah, so it was just a really interesting experience, because it wasn't like, "Oh, go get up on stage and just kind of like soak in the atmosphere of like, oh, how cool is this that you're on the stage." I'm like, no, I'm panicking because I think I'm gonna be awful. Like, I'm gonna be really, really terrible.
Mm-hmm.
um, but yeah, no, it ended up working out really well. And then but again, I finished that run. It went well. Like, I didn't win, but I was still happy with how it went. There was one key RNG moment in the run that we did get to show off, because Pro JN got an item and I didn't get an item, and like,
Mm-hmm.
I was ahead by like 15 seconds at that point, and we were basically even after that fight. So it was just neat to showcase that. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that you could never plan for, because it's like
Mm-hmm.
a 1 in 3 drop, and he got the 1 and 3. I didn't get the 1 and 3, and it was just like, oh, well, so watch what happens now. Is he like murders this boss, and I have to like slowly and methodically like tear it down.
Mm-hmm.
It was just really neat. But then it was right back into the practice room because I'm like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
cool. I got the SNES game out of the way. Now I've got to get the NES game out of the way,
Mm-hmm.
which also led to like a really a funny, entertaining to me moment where I'm practicing River City Ransom, and I hear someone sit down next to me. I hear them say, "Oh, I love River City Ransom." I turn and it's Andrew G.
Well,
I'm
there
like,
he is.
I'm like, hi.
Oh.
And then I proceeded to have like a terrible run because I still wasn't adjusted to
Mm-hmm.
the timing. Not that I wasn't like I didn't want to be like trying to like make excuses or whatever. So I just like did the run and like, shoot, I died there. Let me try this again. And it probably took like 14 minutes. My estimate for the run is 10, by the way.
Mm.
And then but I finished the run and he thanked me for showing him the run and he got up and walked away and I'm like, oh man, what a first impression. Uh
What
it
can you
was just
do? It's Andrew
exactly.
G. I don't think he cares.
No, and I mean he's great. Like I've had
Mm-hmm.
a chance to have like conversations with him since then as well. Because I mean, again, he's a Marble Madness guy as well.
Mm-hmm.
So longtime world record holder in Marble Madness. So like I have you know I've had conversations like limited conversations about things like that and whatnot. So it's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
And so was he. It was all. I mean, it was also cool. Like I got through River City Ransom went like way better than I would have expected, which was really good. I ended up with like a sub 8, which was just amazing. Like I didn't even get hit once until like nearly the very end of the run.
Hmm.
So again, all the practice really did pay off. It was pretty cool. I had another one of those neat circumstantial interactions where you know it reminded me of like how ingrained my brother is in the community because I came out of the stream room one night as like a run that I wanted to watch was ending, and I happened across NES Cardinality in the hallway. And I'm like, man, I'm so happy to meet you. And he's like, shakes my hand. He's like, and I'm so happy to meet you. And he points to my brother who was standing right next to me because like
Mm.
they both like my brother used to do segmented Dragon Warrior 4 runs on SDA because like the back in that day with like again with the recording software
Mm-hmm.
issues and whatnot, the concept of doing like a 7 hour run or 6 hour run was unfathomable in one go. So like, but Nessie, but like I will henceforth refer to NES Cardinality as Nessie because Toad calls him Nessie and so do I, and
Hmm.
it's just stuck in my head. Um,
Noted.
uh, yeah. So, but like Nessie was always fascinated by the Dragon Warrior 4 progress that my brother had made back in like the aughts, as like like pre 2010, like just like the all the segmented work that he had done. So it's just really neat. Like it's like folks that I was really looking forward to seeing really wanted to meet him as well, and it's just like it was just so cool. Um, it's just such a neat experience.
Mm-hmm.
But then my runs were done, and like I said, I wanted my original thought was I really wanted to go to GDQ and just experience the event and have a good time and see what it's like. And I was so hyper focused on these two runs for the first because it was like Wednesday and the wee hours of Wednesday. Because NES runs that aren't like that don't have the word Mario in them get stuffed at like 3 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So so I did my run. And it was like early Wednesday morning, and I finish and I like step out of the stream room and I literally have no idea what to do. I'm like I've been so hyper focused and I'm just like wandering around like a lost child. But
Where
as
am
it
I?
exactly, where am I? What is going on? What is this? So I work my way over into the practice room and I just sit there. I find people I know. I find Ellipsis and Toad and I just kind of plop down in a chair behind them. And they are grinding Marble Madness co-op
Mm.
because like they were in the same place for the first time ever. They're like, oh, we should post a co-op time. Like they were 1 and 2 on the board at the time for any percent. And they had traded it back and forth a little bit during that year. So I watched them grind for a couple of hours until they were finally like, you know what, our thumbs kind of hurt. We need to take a break. So they took a break, and I look over at Ellipsis and I'm like, can I try? I don't think I've ever beaten this game.
Hmm.
Because my brother and I owned Marble Madness when we were younger, and I know that he had beaten it, but I didn't have the patience to figure out anything about
Mm-hmm.
like the momentum of the game and what have you. So like I account for this moment, like literally, like probably the same day I did the River City Ransom run at GDQ, as being the day that I beat Marble Madness for the first time.
Hmm.
As well, which is just kind of neat. Like it was like, well, what do I do now? Oh, that's what I do now. I just start playing a new game. So yeah, but I beat it, and it was also like the first time that I not only beat it, but I knew how well or not I had done. Because in Marble Madness, there's the score calculation at the end. It awards you 20,000 points for finishing, but then it deducts 1,000 points for every time you died, up to 20. At which point you just get no bonus.
Mm-hmm.
This was the first time that I'd ever beaten the game, I think, but for sure it also gave me a good barometer because I died 19 times. So I was like, oh, and I didn't even die the maximum number, because once you get past 20, you could have died 100 times and you wouldn't know because it just says 20.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, and I actually know how I did. So it's like it's a good jumping off point. And I think I probably spent at least like 4 hours a day the rest of the event just playing Marble Madness in the
Hmm.
practice room. It was just so much fun.
Yeah.
And I did see a lot of people too. It was just super
Mm-hmm.
fun.
Just Marble Madness was the important part.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So
And that was HDQ 2017, right?
2017, yeah.
Yeah. Wonder what it was like back then. I think that's the last time Andrew G was at an event, so you really lucked out seeing him, right?
I did, yeah. I want to say you're right on that. Um but I will also say that I did not see his run
Hmm. What did he run
because
then?
he ran SMB1 with Cosmic and
Oh, that was
Darbian.
that year. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it was that year. Yeah. So the interesting thing about it was that, like I was like, regardless of how the schedule comes out, or like, but when it comes out, I promised myself that I would try to get sleep the night before each of my runs,
Mm-hmm.
and like lo and behold, like the Mario runs were Tuesday night, and my River City Ransom run was like 4 a.m. Wednesday morning, and I'm like,
Of course.
you can't be serious. Like I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
walk away from watching these people run Super Mario Bros. Like I said before, I
Mm-hmm.
can watch SMB one any percent hours, and now here's an SMB one any percent marathon run. Like I have to go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
I can't stay up. I have to try to go to sleep. Like this is torture. Like, but it all worked out. I got to meet him and everything, so that was really cool. I think there is, if you are ever interested in just like seeing like a point in time,
Hmm.
um, there's a speedrunner named Linkums who just shot like a 10-minute video of him walking around the hotel. It's
Ooh.
on YouTube. It's really not like it's very good for like that nostalgia hit, because it was at that. I don't like I'm not in there. I was probably asleep at the time, uh, but like he just walks the whole floor. Like he goes like into the practice room and into like the casual room and into the stream room and into tournament rooms. It just like shows the layout of the hotel, and it's so neat.
I wish someone did that
It's
each event now.
I know, yeah,
Damn.
yeah. It's really funny because I really love that video, but I didn't have the foresight to think what you just thought and be like, ah, somebody like, and I have a phone that has a camera. Maybe I should do that for other
Mm-hmm.
ones, But no memories from other events. But yeah, I could try to find that link at some point. It's a really cool video. So
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'd
yeah,
like to watch that.
I will definitely hit you up with the link. I don't want to go to YouTube right now,
That's
for
fine.
fear that it'll make my computer do something weird. So,
Mm.
but I can get that link for you.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, so now it's like winter of 2017,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm on the phone with Lady Yells, with my wife, and my runs have both gone well, but now I have to have um, this backpedaling type of conversation where I had been insistent that I didn't need a CRT, and I was like, now, oh no, I need a CRT. I'll
Mm-hmm.
figure it out. I'll figure out how to fit it in my little corner somehow, but I need a CRT. And then like
Mm-hmm.
it took a couple weeks, but I managed to get a hold of one, and I didn't like I got home from GDQ and I didn't stream. Uh, because I was like, I don't want to stream on any like busted setup ever again.
Mm-hmm.
Like I need to go and get a television. So so I managed to get a CRT and get it all hooked up. and then at that point, I started streaming Marble Madness for the first time, which was kind of cool.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that was I did like a 2 month grind of Marble Madness to begin 2017, and I managed to get down into the 240s, and
Mm.
which was like really like it blew away my expectations for sure. Like I
Yeah,
don't even
that's
know
really
that I really,
fast, it sounds.
yeah, yeah, I don't really know what my expectations were, to be honest. It was like every 3 hour stream that I did, I was just like, well, I hope I do a little bit better than I did the last time. And like
Hmm.
over enough of a window of time, you get down to a point where it's like, okay, well, what is there left to do? Like, are we really going for like a deathless run now, or when do I start looking at the silly skip and all
Hmm.
that sort of stuff? So like I had worked on getting um a deathless run, and I managed to get it. And then I was like, okay, I'll learn the silly skip. Um, so I tried it out, and it seemed wildly inconsistent, but such as life.
Hmm.
And then I did some attempts, and the very first time I got the silly skip, I didn't choke the run, and I got a 245, and
Mm.
I was like, cool. It was third place, right behind Ellipsis and Toad. I'm like, awesome. I am never playing this game again.
Hmm.
There's no way I'm gonna do any better than that.
Yeah, your room and shirt make me think that did not happen though.
Correct.
Hmm.
But yeah, at the time I was just like, oh yeah, no, that's like I'm third. That I'm amazed that I made it all the way to third in like
Hmm.
2 months time, and like I just kind of like lucked out and managed to finish the one run that I got the silly skip in. Like, that's quite a run to chase, and like I don't really feel like running against those splits, so I'm just gonna move on and do something else.
Hmm.
And I did. Yeah, at that point, I was keen to do like 12-hour challenges and stuff. So, because that see, like Golden had put
Hmm.
out that feeler for that sort of community wide engagement. And then I thought it was a really cool idea to just because sometimes runs can feel a bit overwhelming. So like just take 12 hours and just try to post a run. Doesn't have to be the best run you've ever seen. Just try to post a run. So I learned what ended up being like one of the hardest games that I've ever played still to date, which is Kid Icarus.
Mm.
Um, that game's impossible. But I did manage over the course of 2017 to get that down to like 2440, which at the time, when I got the run, I refused to post it on SRC until one of the mods posted Darkwing Duck's run, because I didn't want my run to be in the top spot when it was like minutes behind Darkwing Duck's run, that he doesn't participate in the leaderboards. Like you
Hmm.
need to have like an independent third party just like post the run on their
Hmm.
behalf. So it's like I have a 2440, but you've got to post his like low 23 before I post it, because I don't want to make it seem like I've got the Kid Icarus world record here, because I
Hmm.
certainly don't. My execution is like not the best. But they put it up there. Actually, I think the response to me asking that was, it might have been Infested Rich, who was one of the mods at the time. He responded by saying, I didn't even know I was a mod in this game. By the way, now you're a mod in this game.
Hmm.
So I posted his run.
Hmm.
and
There you
then
go.
and then I uploaded my own after that and let somebody else approve it. And so that was neat. And then for like the second 12-hour challenge that I did, I learned a game. You may have heard of it. I think it's called Super Mario Bros.
What's
Um,
that?
it's this new game. It's
Oh,
like
okay.
platforming and stuff, but
Like a
it's
little
like
small indie
yeah, yeah,
title,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Okay,
an up and coming
got it.
company. Like I will watch out for them. They
Okay,
had
got it.
this guy named Mario. He wears a silly hat and he jumps
Mm.
around all over the place. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, it sounds like
Um,
everything, honestly.
eh,
I don't know how
yeah,
well it'll do.
run and jump. Everybody can
Mm.
do that. I
Hmm.
mean, but yeah, so I tried to do that for a 12-hour challenge, and I got a sub 6, which was like, oh, okay, cool. That was
Hmm.
kind of nice. But then I kind of like I at some point I circled back around on it in like mid 2017. So I was like, it felt like a rite of passage to try and get a sub 5. And this was back when there were 25 sub 5s on the
Yeah,
board.
just a handful.
Yeah, so like I grinded it for a little while, and I managed to get one frame rule away. So I got 5 flat 0.239 was the
Mhm.
time I ended up getting, which I have a screenshot somewhere on my computer that shows that I was, I think, 30th or 31st or 32nd on the SMB1 leaderboard or something like that. I was like right next to Arcus because Arcus was grinding for sub 5 at that same time.
Mhm.
And it was just like, oh, this is so neat. Like I'm so close, but and I wanted to keep going, but I had to kind of pivot away. Um, so I just parked it there. I'm like, ah, it's close. This is the type of time that makes you want to go back right away. I was
Mhm.
like, I can't go back right away. I have to go and do other things. And like the other thing was, I had been talking to the gentleman who I purchased my NES and Super NES from. Runs a retro video game store in Blackwood, New Jersey called Next Level Video Games.
Mm.
And he was trying to arrange different events to celebrate that he had had the store open for 10 years. And I'd been there in there periodically on lunch breaks and whatnot. And he was like, would you be interested in hosting a speedrun event? I'm like, sure, okay, no problem. Like, I'll figure something out. So at that point I was like, well, I mean, I don't know anybody who geographically lives in the area except for myself and my brother and my buddy Mr. Pizak, who had kind of like who had helped me set everything up and configure everything. And he was still, he was like learning Paladin runs for FF4 for the SNES at that point, and like he'd been doing Mickey Mousecapade and stuff. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, between the three of us, if the three of us basically ran like most of our stuff, we could fill in a day.
Mhm.
That could work, and I'll stream it to my channel, and that'll be nice. I think it'll be fun.
Mhm.
Um, and then like weeks passed as I was organizing everything, and then suddenly I get a DM from Nick, who's the store manager, the owner of the store, like a week or so before the event. He's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot to send you this message that I got from another speedrunner that lives just like apparently he lives right down the street from me."
Mm.
And he wanted to participate as well. I wanted to know if you, A, do you know him, and B, would that be okay? And it's his name. His name on Twitch is AND4H. So it's Andy with a four.
Mhm.
He is a like multi-time mystery tournament winner, and like he's like an amazing speedrunner. He does speedruns of Bubble Bobble, which requires an immense amount of note taking
Mm.
during the run to be able to manipulate things the way you want. And it's just fascinating stuff. So I was like, oh, he lives around here? No way. Get him in. So we
Mhm.
actually had him open the event.
Mm.
He did like Mega Man 3 and then Bubble Bobble. And then my brother ran a few games, and my buddy Mr. Pizak ran a few games, and then I ran a few games. And I think most of my runs were overestimate because I was too busy setting
Organizing.
up the
Yeah.
event. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it was fun,
Mhm.
and it was like, oh, that was cool. That was a cool thing to do. What a nice little experience that was, and just kind of like parked it there and resumed speedrunning games. Like I tried to learn Link to the Past, and I decided I did like my longest speedrun to date, which is like I did a 4-hour run of Super Tennis, which is exactly as boring as it sounds because it's
Okay.
just tennis for four
Mhm.
hours. But it was just right around the time that there's an online marathon called Really Really Longathon,
Ah, that. Yeah.
that like I ran. What if the category I think we call it is 101% of super tennis, because inexplicably the person who made the page didn't include all the things you can do in 100%.
Hmm.
So when we were like, well, what about the last guy that you can beat after you win the whole tour? Did you include that in the run? He's like, no. Like, why'd you call it 100% then? So rather than him changing the names, he just made 101% for us so that we could add that part to the end of the run. And my buddy Berlin Dude, and I, like, Berlin Dude has like all the records for super tennis. He's much more patient than I am, and better at executing um, the specific types of strats that the game requires. There are certain games that I speedrun that are difficult for me. Like some stuff I've got good nostalgia for, and it's all good. But then there are other games, and I think it has to do with childhood competency. Insofar as if I played a game when I was young and I was terrible at it, speedrunning is great because it vindicates me
Mhm.
for my terrible times. Whereas if I played something and I felt like I had some level of proficiency at it as a child, I have a really hard time speedrunning the game because I don't want to change my strats. My strats are good. This is what has always worked, and I can beat this game, and yada yada yada. And it's just, it's interesting to see how impatient I get with certain games versus like the level of immense patience I can provide to a game that doesn't deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
But only purely based on the fact that when I was younger, I was terrible at it, and I don't want to be terrible at it anymore. I will do whatever it takes to not be terrible at it.
There you go.
It's an immense motivating factor. So, like, Link to the Past, I refuse to put in the right amount of practice, room to room, like dungeon to dungeon. I just my brain just is like, well, you know how to beat this game, so just beat the game. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, you have to beat it this way, otherwise it's not fast. And it just won't go.
Mm-hmm.
um, but yeah, so Super Tennis was really fun, and then it was good. Um, so I mean that's and like A Link to the Past, I think like I wanted to get a sub 130 for like any percent no major glitches because that to me was like another one of those barometers for a really popular game. I was like, I wonder if I could do that. I only managed to get a sub 135 because I couldn't put in the right amount of time and work, and I just wouldn't make the effort. Admittedly, I just wouldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted the game. The run was too long. I didn't want to put in the amount of time into individual room practice that you realistically need to do to be able to get really good at a game like that. So it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's most of like that's the critical aspects of 2017 at that point. I did attend AGDQ 2018, but I didn't have a run in, which I'm fine with because then
Mm-hmm.
that gave me that experience that I didn't get the previous year, which is like, oh no, just go and hang out. Just go and hang out. It's a
The
lot of
best
fun.
part. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So I got to go and hang out with friends and again, this unlike 2017 where like I knew a handful of people on like through Twitch. Like I had become like, acquaintances, I would say, but like I think I may have just joined Discord like a month before the event, so I wasn't like constantly in people's Discords chatting. I was only whenever I would chat with people in their streams that
Mm-hmm.
I would get to know people. So like I went to AGDQ 2017 knowing like my brother and like two other people. And and then I got sidetracked by having to focus on two runs for 4 days, and I went to the two other people that I knew right after that, and then I started playing Marble Madness the rest of the time. I didn't really mingle as much as I think I feel like I remember doing. Um, this time was really different because again, I wasn't even a volunteer in 2018. I don't think I literally just attended.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, so yeah, it was just a neat different experience. I got to play a bunch of co-op Marble Madness with folks, and I hadn't played it since I put it down in February. So there are a couple of co-op times that are still on the board to this day because I haven't been in the same physical location as those people since like 2018, and those times are not good, and they still make me sad. I'm like, oh, I wish I could get together with that person one more time. We could crush that time,
Mm-hmm.
but I just wasn't like it it was the first time I had really put any time into marbles in again like 10 months or so, and I wasn't good enough to do co-op runs with people. Not that anybody cared, everybody was having fun, but like I just like held myself like, how can you be third place in this game and be so like mediocre at this game? It's just an interesting perspective. But then I also, that was the GDQ where they had the training showcase for Strider with Jimmy
Mm-hmm.
Poopins, where like he was taught Strider live on GDQ stage, and then he had to complete a run. And this is super neat. So like I have one run of Strider on the board because I got caught up in the Ferrari of that as well. Like I remember watching Cool Kid work on it in the practice room after they did that showcase, and then as people were trying it at home, somebody found this massive skip in the final level,
Hmm.
and then like Cool Kid like in the practice room setting world records with the new strat that just like fell into his lap earlier that day.
Hmm.
That was super neat. And then inexplicably for some reason I was just playing a game. I don't even remember what game. And Toad sits down next to me and he's like, "All right, Yells, I'm gonna teach you how to play Super Pitfall." I'm like, oh. I don't know if you've ever played Super Pitfall,
Mm-mm.
but don't.
Okay.
So there you go. But I learned it, and I completed. I got when I got home, I completed exactly one run because the game's terrible. I'm like, I'm never playing this game again. But it gave me an appreciation. I can watch the run now. I watch other people do it, and basically say the same thing. Like, don't ever play this game, folks. He's playing it, and that's fine, but don't do it.
Hmm.
It's awful.
Got it.
um, but yeah, so like that was cool. And then at the back end of that, one of the more unexpected um, things that happened was I was invited to join RGL TV,
Mm.
uh, which was just kind of neat. Like Toad was in there. I met Enemy TV. He was in there, and yeah, they effect for all intents and purposes like recruited and invited me to join their community streaming channel.
Hmm.
Which I graciously accepted because why not? That's
Hmm.
awesome. Like I get to at that point, I was like the schedule was not they weren't partnered yet. The schedule was more focused on some events, yes, but they also were trying to like produce as much live content as they could. So like streamers that were part of the team would, if they wanted them, would be given like a time slot every week. So like every Monday from like 9 to 11 or so, I would stream for 2 hours on that channel, like just as me, just doing whatever speedrun I felt like doing. But I was just like in the rotation.
Hmm.
Like I'd take the hand off from Angry Lanks, and then I would hand it off to Concakes at the end, and it was just neat. It was this neat sense of community, and it's a really great, really is like a great community to be a part of. So, like, I'm still a member of RGL TV to this day.
Hmm.
Um,
I'm in
but it's
their like, what do they call it? Groups, or you know,
yeah, like the
the
team, right? Yeah,
teams.
yeah.
Yeah. I remember like applying for it just because there was like a tweet about it, and I was like, why not? I'm not a part of a team, and so now I'm a part of the team.
You're part of the team.
Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
oh, that was team creation is one of the features that partners have, I believe. So like that,
Hmm.
as soon as we got partnered, we were able to do that and create that team. So like everybody who had been enjoying our various like one night only tournaments and retrothon and the things like that. It's like, oh, you want to be a part of the team here? You follow this link and you can be part of Team RGO, and
Hmm.
it was pretty neat.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we did. So I joined RGL TV in early 2018, and at that point, I had gotten a call shortly after that in like the late winter, early spring from Nick from the video game store. And he's like, "Hey, do you want to do that thing again where
Hmm.
you did the speedrunning show?" Like, and I was like, "Oh, okay, sure." Like I thought we were just doing it to celebrate his like 10th anniversary, and I was like, I assume it's one and done. And
Hmm.
whether we had a good time or like I had a good time, everybody who was there seemed to have a good time. But it was like that was fun, but I wouldn't impose. But
Hmm.
yeah, he came back. He's like, "Hey, do you want to host it again? This seems like a fun idea. Like we should do it another time." So we did another edition. This like the previous one was in June, and we did this one in May instead, just because timing worked out better.
Hmm.
But then we didn't like open up submissions or anything, but I reached out to people now that I now have this new community of folks that I know through RGL TV. I knew like Enemy didn't live too far away from me, and a couple other folks didn't live too far away from me. They were also part of the community, like Flannel Cat and a few other folks. So it was like, okay, well let's try to expand it a little bit, and we ended up having like 8 runners instead of 4. Everybody got like their own like 2 hour block, and we actually did it on Saturday and Sunday with like, we didn't go overnight or anything. It was like
Hmm.
Saturday we'll do runs, we'll go out to dinner really late, and then we'll do more runs on Sunday, and it'll be fun. And yeah, everybody really seemed to enjoy it. And it was at that point, as I was leaving, that as we are leaving the event, that the conversation came up about a partnership between NLSS and RGL. Because at this point we were streaming. The first one I streamed to my channel. The second one we actually made like a next level speedruns channel. Then we streamed it over there. But obviously it doesn't have the same pulling power that RGL does. So they were like,
Hmm.
oh, well maybe we should do another one of these and do it with RGL. I'm like, cool. When do you want to do the other one? They're like, how about September? Like, oh, you like literally you want to do another one like in a few months?
Hmm.
Okay. So yeah, so that's we ended up it ended up becoming like a twice a year thing at that point, where we did it in like May and September, which doesn't really line up very well. But we were kind of trying to avoid certain larger speedrunning events. I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the times that we did it, we overlapped pretty heavily with like the end of RPG Limit Break, and we really didn't want to do that because that wasn't like that's not we don't want to do like a disservice to like you like having retro content nice and spread out,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Um, so we did our best with that, but yeah, we had two. We did another one in the fall, and for this one, that one in the fall was where we opened up submissions. Okay, well, we're like RGL has like a good enough website with a form you can go and fill out and submit runs. Let's do it that way. We'll just do the way that you would expect a marathon to go. And then they also added in the extra piece where they're like, okay, well, you're gonna accept submissions for um, offline, or like not offline but like in person
Mm-hmm.
runs, and like you can't keep the store open all night, but we would like to see if we can make this event be continuous.
Mm-hmm.
And since they had just gotten partner at that point, they're like, we can get some front page time, all the stuff, it'll be great. So like we started Saturday at noon and we did speedruns in the store until about 10 p.m, and then we basically just had a handover, and then other members of RGL TV that didn't live in the area, they put together a block from 10 p.m. until like noon the next day, and they did speed runs all through the night online.
Mm-hmm.
At which point, like we came into the store, reopened the store, and at noon on Sunday, we resumed in-person runs for Sunday, and that was just such a neat concept to be able to go like in person to online to back to in person.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've seen events do things like that in subsequent years, but I had not seen it up to that point. It was just really fun. So it wasn't the type of thing that I ever expected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um, so the other interesting thing, well, that's a good point. Lady Yell's mentioning in chat that like very few people actually live in the general area that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Like so they had to travel several hours, and we actually had a couple of folks fly in
Hmm.
to participate in the event, which was like really neat. It was just
Professional event. There you go.
yeah, I mean, just like literally done in like the center of this retro game store.
Mm-hmm.
We just like got like 20 odd chairs and set them up behind a television, and it felt like it feels like if you look at a video of like some of the GDQs that were at the 4-H, like it's like that but smaller. Like
Mm-hmm.
there was not a lot of room in this place, which is fine. Like
Mm-hmm.
not a commentary on it. Like and as it was, we made do, and Nick was very accommodating to that end, because we were able to like, even though there's very little space, we were able to set up like two small areas with other televisions so that people could practice before their runs.
Mm.
And we had like I literally, my we literally took my wife's desk, or maybe like she might have a table of hers that we had, and we took it and broke it down and took it with like I took my whole computer setup, all my streaming gear, and we just drove it over there, and I set it up just behind the television that we were going to be streaming on. So like the tech station is literally like just over the wall. Like it's just like just look up over like the 27-inch TV, and like we're right here.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the whole thing. It was really interesting how much you can cram into such a small area, but it was cozy and everybody really liked it, and it was just a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
It was beyond my expectations for sure. But yeah, it was around that time that I had finally started to consider going back to Marble Madness, and it wasn't because I just like suddenly had an epiphany and I was just like, oh, you know what, I can do better than that.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I did was I decided that the game was short enough that I thought it might be good for like a sort of a challenge run slash parlor trick sort of thing. I convinced myself that I would be able to beat the game with one player, two controllers. I
Mm.
don't know why I convinced myself that I could do it. I think part of it was um, at one of the NLSS run events, was watching Flannel Cat do one of her runs, and for reasons that I'm not clear on, but it's all about comfort for her. Like she was literally playing a game with the controller inverted,
Hmm.
like rotated 180 degrees, and she's just like, it just feels more comfortable this way. I don't know why. Like I would rather move the D-pad inverted with my right thumb than and like press the buttons with my left thumb. It just feels right. I'm like, okay, that's
Hmm.
interesting. And I was like watching her use that grip, and it suddenly was like, oh, I wonder if I could take that sort of concept, because to me, what it reminded me of was, I think it's Secret of Mana has a 1P2C category that I've always referred to this as like the Yagamoth grip, where essentially you hold one controller normally and then you have the second controller inverted underneath so that you can access the D-pad.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I wonder if that type of control scheme would work for Marble Madness. So because I'm weird, I decided that on my birthday I was going to do a special birthday stream, and I was going to try to do one player two controller. And in the week running up to it, like I didn't try it at all. All I did was I tried to beat the game with the second player marble, because you can set up a save state easy enough. Like you start the run, you just keep running the blue marble up off the top of the screen until it runs out of time, and then poof, save a state, and now you basically have your P2 speedrun set up so you can practice it all you want
Mm-hmm.
with like the full amount of time and everything. So I was practicing it, but I was intentionally practicing it while holding the controller inverted,
Mm-hmm.
just so I could see, can I get a feel for the movement, like how hard it would it actually be to move around. And I was able to get to the end at the last level, but I wasn't able to finish. Like once I got to the platforms at the end, it's like, nah, this is not. It's not really tenable.
Mm-hmm.
um, but then I waited until, so I did that in the run up. But then like on my birthday, I tried both controllers at the same time for the first time, and it was an experience.
Mm.
It
One
was
of
the
them
best
of all time.
of all of them. It was definitely one of them.
Yes, of course.
As you know, you get, and I see this whenever like I have like a friend, or if my brother tries to do it or what have you. That the concept of seeing a problem, trying to fix the problem, but trying to fix it with the wrong controller and instead creating two problems.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it
I
becomes
see.
quickly becomes a theme where it's like my brain says to do this, but it doesn't know how to do this, so it did it with the wrong controller instead.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're pretty much boned here. So yeah, so I tried it, and it took about 3 weeks, and then I actually got a run where I just got three well-timed wands to give myself an extra 30 seconds, and I managed to like clutch out a finish.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, I actually did it. That's amazing. Um, but it wasn't like, from my estimation, like it wasn't something that I felt like I could do consistently.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of nuances to co-op marbles in general, where the game just isn't, it's not built terribly well. Like there are sprite limits that it just gets overloaded, and if you just do things at a specific time, the run just crashes. Particularly at the very end of Marble Madness, if you're playing two player, if you don't get Steely, the black marble, off the screen, the game just crashes if you try to finish. Like
Mm.
it can't handle all the platforms moving and three marbles on the screen at the same time. It just breaks the game.
Hmm.
So you're like, okay, well that's problematic, because now slowing down to kill Steely is really slow. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that's not optimal. He can despawn himself if it goes up off the top of the screen, but you kind of have to bait him into doing it. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, how effectively can you do that consistently and actually get it to work out right? Um, and now compound that with, well, now I'm going to do it 1P2C, and I'm both marbles, so now I have to try to coax him off with one of them
Mm-hmm.
while just like going with the other, I guess, so it's not in the way, and it was just really
Complicated
really messy.
mess. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
definitely a complicated mess. So, I would say that the most consistent I ever got, it was like a coin toss, like
Mm-hmm.
50-50. Like half the time I can finish the run, half the time the run is gonna suck, and it's just not gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of moments just of movement where like you miss a cycle for something and you lose a boatload of time. Um, and it was just like, yeah, but the movement to get to that spot is actually, it's pretty hard. You can get hung up real easily on a two-player run
Mm-hmm.
if you just mess up like specific windows. And Yeah, it doesn't. And I've had plenty of experiences. That second NLSS of that year, the first one that we did through the night with RGL,
Mm-hmm.
I failed to finish a run of 1P2C in that marathon, and it wasn't close. I'm not even sure both marbles made it to the last race. It was so bad. Um, but it's just like gave me that idea of like just like this is a fun like parlor trick sort of thing that I can do sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not like something that I could show off at a marathon, in my
You're
estimation.
doing a lot of
So,
foreshadowing, I've noticed.
um, yeah, can you tell that I'm slightly prepared for this interview?
Well, you're more
um,
prepared than me.
so but at that point, like what happened was once the dust settled from NLSS from like the second one with RGL for 2018, I kind of I found myself in a position where I wasn't working on a game, and I had now become much more familiar mechanically with Marble Madness. Like I had a new appreciation for it, I would say. Like some of the strats that I had to execute in order to make 1P2C viable at all was indicative of the fact that like I had just learned so much about the game compared to where I was when I just kind of fumbled into a 245 one day. So I was like, okay, I think I'm actually gonna try to grind it again. So like thus began Marble Madness grind number 2. I didn't necessarily have a goal in mind. It was just like, okay, I'm just gonna grind. We'll see if I can get like up close to where times were. Because the one big change that had happened, um, the Marble Madness speedrunning board had grown a little bit, but it had been playfully it had been invaded.
Mm.
The Marble Madness speedrun board had been invaded by Spelunky speedrunners.
Mm.
Kinejup, who had most of the world records in the original Spelunky, also loves retro games. So like he's got like a sub 10 in Chippendale, and
Mm.
and he really enjoyed Marble Madness, and he kept trying to like convince other Spelunky speedrunners to try playing these games. So Kinney posted like a 244
Wow.
in Marble Madness, which is really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And he's to this day, I believe he has the fastest time for somebody using the 45-degree setting.
Mm.
So like he doesn't use like the standard, the
Mm-hmm.
default setting. He uses it where like you press down and
And
it
it's
moves
diagonal.
diagonally.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so
Um,
weird.
yeah, it's just like it's literally he grew up playing it that way. He
Yeah,
doesn't
well.
know any different, so it's just like that's what's comfortable for me. Like so it's him
Well,
and
yeah.
CHX42,
Mm-hmm.
or as we know him in the Marble Madness community, CHX45
Mm.
are the two like the primarily the two folks that do 45-degree control scheme speedruns of Marble Madness. But yeah, so like Kenny posted a 244, and like he managed to get a couple of other folks to post times, and some of them were just just in the mix, which was nice. But then you also had Mike is my Ike, who posted a lower 244 than he did, and then a Finnish speedrunner named Speff, who took the time all the way down to a low 241.
Mm.
Keeping in mind that Ellipsis's record at that time was like a mid 243. Like
So huge cut.
like he took like an extra like 9 frame rules off of it. And
Mm.
at this point, we didn't frame rules weren't really being discussed in the Marble Madness community at that point. Like we weren't down that far. Essentially, it was just like
Mm-hmm.
no, it's just like you just do this level better, you do that level worse, and that's it. There's
Mm-hmm.
nobody's pushing any barriers. But then Speff was really the first one to actually start pushing barriers for different levels. There were like he was semi consistently matching the tasks in the practice race, and we're like, wow, this is amazing. Like we're not really familiar with this because the first race you start with 60 seconds, and so the barometer had always been like based upon how much time is left on the timer when you finish the level. It's like, did you finish with 54 or 55? And
Mm-hmm.
55 was just considered good, and we didn't really appreciate, well, there are 4 different 55s because the frame rules are in 16 frame intervals, and a second in Marble Madness is 64 frames.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's just 4 different versions of the 55 that you can get, and we just didn't have that level of detail at the time. But like he was really pushing, and so the one time we really noticed was when he's like, no, put this up against the task. It's the same. Like he
Mm-hmm.
matched it. That's amazing. You
Mm-hmm.
know. So he pushed it all the way down to a low 241, and my sights were not set on 241. I was literally just like, no, I want to improve my 245. I feel like I understand the game a little bit better, and I started grinding.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then literally, I didn't get to 243 in 2018. I literally got to 243 11 minutes into 2019.
Hmm.
I was streaming on New Year's Day, or New Year's Eve rather. I stopped at midnight to go and give Lady L's a smooch, and then I came back down to my computer and I started streaming again. And like the third attempt or whatever, I got the 243.630, which was 2 frames faster than Ellipsis's time, which put me in second place. I was like, well, that was not what I expected. Not how I expected to start the year, but that was like, oh, 2019 is officially the year of marbles. So
Mm-hmm.
watch out.
It has declared.
Uh, I've declared it. It is happening now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then yeah, and then at that point, I went to AGDQ 2019 because I was like, that next week, I got to go. This is I'm spoiled to a degree, or at least I was at that point, because AGDQ was a 4-hour drive from my house, so it was like, oh, there's no cost to get there. It's literally just the cost to stay.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause one of the big things about GDQ is it's like it's a decent amount of money that you have to invest to attend.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was really lucky that it just happened to be somewhere nearby that I didn't have to like chuck a whole bunch of money into to be able to go. Like I had to like share a hotel room with 3 other people. That's no problem.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so oddly, um, AGDQ 2019 was simultaneously one of the worst experiences that I've had and one
Hmm.
of the best. It was the worst because of work.
No.
Um, I literally had a team member on my team at work tell me that her last day was the day that I was leaving for GDQ.
Mm.
I was like, really? You can't like stay one more? Like she basically gave like 1 week notice when you would expect
Mm.
to get
A
two.
two. Yeah.
And she's like, no, I'm out. And I'm like, so I literally had to like pack up work stuff and throw it in the trunk of my car. And like I have pictures um from the hotel room of like my workstation like right below like the television where you could watch the stream.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like every morning I had to work for like 4 or 5 hours in the morning because I didn't have any coverage
Mm.
for my job, which is just like I was like it was terrible. It was just like I saw 2 runs in the stream room that entire week.
Mm.
And it's just like, oh, it just wasn't like harkening back to the AGDQ 2018 experience. It's like this is not the experience that I'm after
Mm-hmm.
at all. This stinks. But the other part of it was like in the afternoon I would get to go and mingle and hang out with everybody, and things were good to that degree. And that was where I found myself at like what was as a chicken place like Nando's, I think,
Nando's.
in
Yep.
Maryland. Yeah, in
That's what it
Maryland
was.
with yeah with Enemy and Elrock and a few other people, and we were some people, unidentified people, were lamenting that not many NES runs got in, but there was this like 9-hour Final Fantasy 9 speed run on
Mm-hmm.
the schedule, and it's like the question came up. So like, I wonder, like, yeah, like how, like, kind of exasperated. Like, how many NES games could you fit during that window of time? And then we decided we wanted to find out.
Mm-hmm.
So, we like I had some streaming software, or like not software, but like we kind of muddled together. Like some people had capture stuff with them, so they could capture like co-op runs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like we weren't prepared for this at all. Like I think I had like some crappy headset that was with my like work computer that did not work very well. I didn't have like a functional laptop because I can't manipulate my work laptop in any sort of way like that. So like we borrowed a Dot's laptop, and we started just like asking around, like, hey, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna record um, Nest Block.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna see how many. We want to see how big the NES community is, like right here at the event, and we want to give everybody a chance to be showcased. And just like see when the community comes together, we want to put together like a big block of games, like all like, give us your favorite NES run. Doesn't even have to be your best one. Just give us your favorite run, and we'll record it all, and then we'll set up a Twitch channel for Nest Block, and we'll just watch it all back like a couple weeks from now. We'll put all the VODs up there. We'll post the schedule so that you know when your runs are up, and we'll just watch it back, and it'll be fun.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it ended up being like this cool 18-hour long thing where it was amazing. You got like what 30, 40 people that are all like, oh yeah, I'll run this. I'll be there at 4 in the morning, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so neat. Like it was twice the length of that FF9 run.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, everybody had a really good time, and it's weird its own way how like I find myself in situations like organizing events, and I had never, when I started speedrunning, it was never a thought in my mind of like, what I want to get into organizing speedrun events.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't really, it was never part of my plan. It just kind of like happened to fall that way. And like credit to Enemy and Elrock, like they were really good sports about the whole thing. And well, they were integral to the whole thing, I should say. Let me clarify that point.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a few other folks at Nando's there, and I apologize because some of their names are escaping me at the present moment. But had folks from different aspects of the retro community, whether they're speedrunners or just like attendees that love speedrunning, that just all wanted to see it happen. So
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, we just put it together, and it happened. I was I have like one interesting tidbit, because like we were setting up to get it ready, and we were a little bit worried that GDQ might have concerns about it, because we're just
Mm-hmm.
like doing it in the practice room, and it just seems like innocuous enough. Like we're just
Yeah.
like we're
As
not
long as you're not
being
live
like
streaming it, because then they'd have issues. But you're recording it,
exactly
which is different.
yeah
They're not
we're
going to
not we're
interfere with the actual
it's not
broadcast.
right, it's not counter programming.
Mm-hmm.
It's we're just doing this for fun. We're just bringing the NES community together. But so I think it was like Enemy probably made the Nest Block Twitter account, and he started tweeting out about it. And I was doing a check-in shift with it was with Darkman. So like GDQ staff, like not like
Mm-hmm.
another volunteer, but with actual GDQ
Yeah.
staff. And he's like looking, he's like the one running the GDQ Twitter account at that point, and he sees a tweet about Nestblock, and he looks at me, he's like, you know what this is? And I'm like, nope, no idea,
Mm-hmm.
because like at that point I'm like honestly concerned about like I don't want to get us in trouble for like we don't. It's kind of a gray area, but you don't want some sort of silly miscommunication to be the reason why you can't go to a GDQ anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather just like show that it's just, oh no, it's just like a local recording. We're just having a good time, and it's all good. We're
Mm-hmm.
not like, because at that point also, just having come out of conversations where people were expressing genuine displeasure at the lack of NES representation on the schedule, I'm like, I don't want to be that voice. I want
Mm-hmm.
to be more of a positive voice of just like bringing the NES community together, and not be like, well, we're doing this because we think you stink. No, we're just doing it because we think we're cool.
Mm-hmm.
And like we want to give everybody a chance to show off their runs and stuff.
Yeah. I
So yeah, it was a lot
remember
of. Go ahead.
um I was obviously in it.
Mhm.
You kind of alluded to it. It was pretty early on too. Like I don't know if the like VODs are numbered in the sequential order or
Yeah, I'd have
not,
to check.
but
Yeah,
it was like number 5 or something. It was really early.
yeah, it was
And
very very early
I
on.
think
You
that
were
was
right
like
before.
technically my first ever like marathon run in a traditional sense
Oh, that's awesome.
because I was still fairly new there. I had like 300 followers max or something.
Hmm.
Um didn't have any like fancy records yet. That came like 3 months later, but um yeah, I know I did like some Midwest Speedfest run, but I don't know if that was before or after that, and even that was like online at some ungodly hour. I didn't have a camera or anything, so it was jank as hell,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't know
Oh,
what
but I
I
mean,
was doing.
again, like Nest Block One in particular was the jankiest of jank as well. So
It was
you
a
know,
bit jank. There was
yeah,
no audio for the game. You had to hear it
yeah.
through the headset, at least for a little bit.
There were, I think the solution to that ended up being, there was a weird hitch with the GV USB 2 capture card,
Mm-hmm.
where the audio just after a certain amount of time just drops out. It's a feature, I guess. I don't know what's going on with it. But
It's a
so
shitty
our
feature.
solution, right, exactly. So like we did the first like 6 or 7 runs all in one block, and then at that point it was just like, you know, I wonder if the audio is messing up. And we listened back a VOD. I'm like, oh yeah, oh it's gone. That
Mm-hmm.
stinks. I feel bad for a couple of these runners. You can kind of hear it, like you're saying. You
Mm-hmm.
kind of hear it through
Kind
the
of hear it.
microphone or headset. So at that point, we decided that, okay, well, we're gonna capture each run locally individually. So like launch OBS, start the run, finish the run, stop the recording, close OBS, launch OBS again, and just like do it in a loop like that, so that the audio would constantly be resetting.
Mm-hmm.
Which was funny because like we lost one run.
Mm.
It was Enemy's Ninja Gaiden 2 run, because like he was the one at that point who was doing the tech, but then he had to slide over to another chair, so he had somebody who was just sitting there, like hit start and everything. And when he asked them to start the timer, they stopped the recording.
Mm.
And
Oh,
then
because it
when
was the same like
it
hotkey.
was the same hotkey.
Yep,
So like
yep.
when he's like and time, and they hit the button again, and it starts again. So you've got a recording where it's like 3, 2, 1, and then it cuts, and then the next VOD is him saying time.
That's funny.
So it's just like, you have I think on the VOD I put in like a little like 20-second snippet where that just says like 11 minutes and 36 seconds later, and then you just hear like Ninja Gaiden music in the background, and then it's and time.
That's great.
And look, I mean, again, Enemy was a great sport about that in particular. Like he was one of the folks who wanted this event to happen,
Mm-hmm.
so he was more than happy. Like nobody wants to lose their record of their run,
Mm-hmm.
but if anybody, at least it wasn't one of the folks that had volunteered to like participate in our thing. It was one of us instead.
Mm-hmm.
So
And I remember you and him like did a little, I don't know, commentary like post like after the event, and it was like the
yeah.
first episode of that chain of stuff. I remember specifically because you mentioned my run in it, and I didn't expect it. It was because Cosmic was like commentating it, and you actually thought like the audio cutting out for those early runs was a good thing because you probably wouldn't have been able to hear him commentate my run because the
Yeah, we've
headset was so like sensitive to just the person.
Yeah, it was a little too like it's like I can't remember the setting for a microphone that makes it focus specifically on one direction as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to being like omnidirectional. Like cardioid, I think, something like that. But yeah, like that microphone was so much that yeah, the game audio would have drowned Cosmic out entirely.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, you know what? That actually worked out to our favor, because like we just figured, well, it's like, oh, if you're sitting here and the headset's like this and the commentator's on that side, it should pick them up, right? But it did
Surely
not.
it'll be fine.
So we kind of lucked into that one for
Mm-hmm.
sure. But yeah, it was just super fun,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, uh, in that same way that folks came back to NLSS saying like, hey, when are we going to do this again? Future GDQs were like, oh, are we having an S block this
Mm-hmm.
time? It was just like people had so much fun. Let's do it again. That sounds like a good idea. Um. So yeah. So like that again. Like the week was not fun because of work,
Mm-hmm.
but that event was so much fun because it was just like such a neat community thing that it kind of redeemed the event part way. Not enough, of course, because at that point I came back home and I said to Lady, I was like, if I can swing it once work is kind of like back to whatever, I've got support again, I'd really like to go to the summer one because I kind of felt like this one didn't count.
Mm-hmm.
Like I didn't really get to have the experience, and I'd love to go to this. I've never gone to the summer one before, so I was like, oh, well, that would be fun to be able to like go out to the summer one. Um, so at that point, uh, you know, I was I wasn't necessarily sure what to run. And again, I had gotten that 243 in marbles. I'd put it back down, just kind of like flitting between games that I had already played, not really picking up anything new. And then the submission window opened up, and Ellipsis reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, do you want to submit co-op marbles?" I'm like, "Sure, why not?" Like we hadn't done we did co-op marbles each GDQ when we were in person. So like we're like 17, I was watching them play, and then 18 we did, like I mentioned, I did some forgettable co-op attempts with people because I didn't really think I was any good at that point. But because I had just finished grinding for 243, I was like right in it. Like I was like
Mm-hmm.
that 243 was days old when I showed up at GDQ. So Ellipsis and I proceeded to like demolish the co-op record that existed at that time at AGDQ 2019. So he's like, "Well, this is like perfect segue. Like we just nailed that world record, and like that was probably like the but top five as far as like GDQ submissions go for like the amount of time and energy I put into like writing a script out and like using the game's like history and like all the providing as much information as possible to try to really sell the game.
Mm-hmm.
Because like as I was like, oh well, this like you may not know this, but Co-op Marble Madness is already a fixture at GDQ, despite having never been run before, because it's happening in the background every single time we're all here, and they got in.
Mm-hmm.
So like we got Co-op Marble Madness in for SGDQ 2019. As a fun side note, I submitted one P2C as well, despite and like I acknowledged at the time that like the success rate's like 50-60%, something like that, and they didn't accept it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, that's fine. We got co-op in. That's good. You know. But because because of how the run works basically, like one person has to be P1, one person has to be P2, and it doesn't really make sense for you to like switch back and forth when you're warming up because it's just pick a role and let's just practice it and we'll get into good position. And it was at that point that like Ellipsis was like, well, I'll be red, like P2, and that opened the door for me to just be like, okay, it sounds like it's time for Marble Madness grind number 3 because the
Mm-hmm.
only way I can practice for co-op as blue is to just do it any percent attempts.
Mm-hmm.
So I just dove straight back in March into Marble Madness again, like for a third grind, and this grind went for like 5 months.
Mm.
Um, I mean, like it was 3 months into the 5 months at the time SGDQ came about, and at that point I had gotten because again there was me, like 243.63, and then there was Spef at like 241.1. It's like
Mm-hmm.
miles away, like in a game that short. Like I have 2.5 seconds. Where am I gonna get 2.5 seconds from? So yeah, I just started grinding, and I got I think my PB as of SGDQ 2019, I had just gotten like a high 241. So like I grinded my way down through 242. I started slowly learning different strategies to try to like save like small chunks of time, like things that it was clear I wasn't doing or like wasn't doing fast enough in previous runs, and like as opposed to just go fast and don't make mistakes. It was like no, also specifically do this, like
Mm-hmm.
do this specific setup, anticipate this specific pattern, and go. Um, I got down to like the basically the second ever 241, but it was like a 241.9, and Spef was a 241.1. So I went to SGDQ as like within a second of the record. Um, and then we did our SGDQ run. It raised $0 for the event because the tracker was down the whole time.
Well, oh
Um,
well.
oh well, what are you gonna do?
Nothing you can
Um,
do.
but the interesting circumstances around that were I was like probably about 2 hours before the run. I was in the stream room, like it's just it was the actual NES block, but
Mm-hmm.
for the event because like we actually had like a 4 hour block of runs on the schedule. So I'm like watching like David TKI run Blaster Master and run and like Kirby Master running like I think it was like Ducktales 2 or Chip and Dale 2 maybe it was. I can't remember which. It was one of the sequel games. Just like lots of really good. It was the Darkwing Duck ran Rygar and like had our host Sporadic Erratic had her like read donations to like the beat of the music going on in the background as he was grinding experience. It was like little funny things that were happening during the event. Um, but I'm sitting there in the stream room watching this stuff, and my phone goes off, and I look, and it's a text from Enemy. He's like, "So you're gonna run one P2C afterwards, right?" I'm like, "No."
Hmm.
Like, like it didn't get in. It would feel weird to try to like cram it into the schedule. After like as I submitted this, they said no. I'm not gonna like insist or
Mm-hmm.
like try to like force something upon them. And he's like you should shoot your shot at least. You should at least ask. And like I just like disregarded it at the
Mm-hmm.
time. So like that's silly. Um, so we get close enough to the time for the run to go off, and we go into like the backstage area where they're going over name pronunciations and pronouns and getting everybody ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the producer for the day or for that window of time, which was Amerlin, who I also found out also lives kind of in this area, which I didn't know at the time. I was like, there's so many people that live around here that I just didn't know. But Amerlin was doing production at that time, and he came over to us really apologetically because they were running really far ahead,
Mm.
which is uncharacteristic for a GDQ event, to say the
Mhm.
least.
Yes.
They were running a bit ahead, and they were missing one person for their upcoming interview. So like there wasn't going to be as big of a gap as they expected between when they thought we were going to go on and when we actually were going to need to go on. So thinking that with enemies' thoughts running through my head, I'm like, I can give you an extra 5 minutes if you want. I can do one P2C run. And he's like, all right, I'll ask. And he walked away, and I turned to Ellipsis like, the hell did I just do?
Mhm.
Like I didn't practice this at all. Like I'm prepped for co-op. I
Mhm.
literally hadn't done one P2C runs in the practice room because I didn't want to like mess up my muscle memory. So I would be going into this cold.
Mhm.
Um, but so but I'm like, all right, well, I said what I said. Just
Mhm.
let it go. And like, so it was probably like 10 minutes later or so. We're still like the previous run is just finishing up, and Emerlin comes over to us. He's like, actually, I can't find any staff members, to approve it. So I just say, F it, we'll just put it in.
Hmm.
I'm like, all
Well.
right, well. So I texted enemy. It's like, yep, it's in. It's after the co-op run. He's like, what? um, and yeah, and so then the least stressful run of Marble Madness I've ever done in my entire life was the run before the 1P2C run because I knew what was coming.
Mhm.
So like, you know, I hit like a one bounce silly skip. Like all of my movement was really crisp. I had a little flub at the end, which was really just kind of funny because, because of my history with Marble Madness, we actually refer to the last sequence of the game as the Yells choke corner
Mm.
because I've choked lots and lots of runs right at the end, right there. And so like I died maybe like 3 or 4 times, or like maybe 3 times during the entire run, and then I died like 4 times at the corner.
Mhm.
Because like one time I just overran it at the start, and then I missed the turn, and then I fell off again. It was funny. It really was like, and I was again thinking about what was coming.
Mhm.
All I really cared about was this. I'm glad I'm laughing and having fun because I feel like this is about to probably be not fun.
Mhm.
Like it's just going to be an experience, and I've got to like focus a bit here. Um, so yeah, and then we we explained about the 1P2C run, and I decided that it would be funny, that instead of using my second controller, I would ask Ellipsis if I could borrow his controller for a second. As just like, well, this will be funny. I'll just borrow his controller and I'll do the run with his controller. I've never used his controller before.
Mhm.
So again, like not only not practice the run, I don't know how like stiff or not his D-pad is. So like
Mhm.
no clue at all. Um, and then we get into the run. I'd say I haven't practiced this because I felt like I had to say something
Mhm.
in case it went really horribly south. Like I feel like I should say right at the beginning that I didn't practice this, but let's go.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I didn't miss any of like the really big stopping points. Like there's a stopping point early on in the second race where you can lose a ton of time if you don't make the bridge cycle, and I didn't miss the bridge cycle. I didn't get the first death warp right, but I also didn't lose. There were multiple situation moments in there where I very nearly lost time, but didn't. And I feel like the wand, when it showed up, it kind of saved me at one point. Like it could stop the screen just long enough for me to see that I was just about to like move the screen down and like cost one of the marbles 5 seconds. Because if you
Mhm.
drag one of the marbles through, whenever it respots, it loses 5 seconds as a penalty. So the goal, the strat around it is to like if you drag the marble when it was already dying, it doesn't take the penalty because it's still just trying to like respawn it from the death. So it just keeps like trying to respot and trying to respot as you're like pushing the level down,
Mhm.
and you just carry it through some of the harder sections without penalty. So I messed up the first one, and I had a couple of times where I almost messed up a couple of other spots, and the game gave me 3 wands.
Hmm.
Like of all the times to give me like lots of extra time, it gave me 3 wands. One of them barely did anything though. It only gave me like 2 seconds because my timer was already at 97 when it went off. But
Hmm.
um, it just that's just how it ended up working out. I commented during one of the middle races that like his D-pad was pretty nice and loose, much looser than mine. I like uh when I'm doing Marble Madness attempts, I like the D-pad to leave an imprint of the arrow on my thumb.
Mm.
Like that's how stiff I want the D-pad to be. Like I want to have to like hurt myself to make the marble turn,
Hmm.
that sort of thing. That's just what's comfortable for me. Like, and I
Mhm.
don't use a D-pad that stiff for other games, but for marbles, that's what's always comfortable. And his D-pad was super duper loose, which for P2 is good because sometimes you really need that cardinal direction to go off at this moment. You're not using your normal D-pad thumb, so it's just like I need this to work first try and no fuss. It's just got to go.
Mhm.
And it was able to get into really good positions for certain death warps and certain movements, and I was like, yeah, really nice D-pad here. And and everything went on. I did like the hot drop at the bottom of intermediate with one of the marbles, just like showing off on a run where I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna finish, but let me do some swag here real quick.
Mhm.
Um, it didn't get silly skips, but that's okay. And I get down to the end, and I get down to that section where you've got to get Steely off the screen,
Mhm.
and I had the red marble was getting screen dragged for the death warp, and it got spotted right as Steely ran into it, and Steely killed itself
Oh, well, there you go.
on the ricochet, and I didn't have to do anything. So then I proceeded, I kind of put Ellipsis' controller on my in my lap. I finished the run with blue, and then I grab his controller, and then I try to do the turn for the snake, and I just die immediately because the
Hmm.
D-pad is so loose, and I'm like, oh no.
Mhm.
And what I looked at the time, and so did Ellipsis. It was just like, okay, there is like just I can't die again. I can't miss another cycle, but I could miss that cycle because of how
Mhm.
much time I had. But I've got to get the snake right first try. I got to get the hill right first try, and I've got to not yells choke the corner first try, and then we're good. But I'm
Mhm.
just like that. My movement is so herky jerky on the snake section. Like if you go back and look at that section, like I almost die like 3 times. Like it's very cardinal movement and not a lot of diagonals. And like there were a couple times where I pretty sure that I was only a pixel away from oversteering and dying, but I didn't. And then I managed to finish the run with 3 seconds left on Red's timer, and I didn't know what to do with myself.
Mhm.
It's just like,
You can't
oh my
script
god,
it.
oh my god, I did it time, and I just put my head in my hands and just like, and I'm remembering NLSS when I failed the run, and I did it at S Block and I failed the run. I'm just like, I can't finish this run in a marathon. I can't believe I actually finished it here.
Mhm.
It's just like, it was what it's like again, without debate, like top 5 as far as like days in my life.
Hmm.
Like I never felt so accomplished, like I was able to like really showcase something that was just like super neat that at the time nobody else could even do on record,
Mhm.
which was just really really fun. Um, the the upshot to that as well, like the two funny things that were happening like after the fact, like I had asked them to shift the camera down so that they could see my hands,
Mhm.
which like the only downside to that is that you lose the crowd,
Mhm.
because you can I won't deny that I've watched that VOD again.
Of course.
Of course,
Mhm.
because I'm really proud of that moment. But the applause during the co-op run and the applause during the 1P2C run are starkly different.
Mhm.
I can feel like a difference in the appreciation for what's happening. And like right before they move the camera down, you can see a couple people like looking um like head in hands, just kind of like, he's gonna do what with the other controller,
Mhm.
like right as the camera pans down. But like just the volume in the room was just like so gratifying. Like I felt it's just like it was just so great. Like it was just such a neat thing.
Mhm.
And then after the run, like a couple hours after the run, I had to do a check-in shift because I was
Mhm.
volunteering at the check-in desk. And PJ, PJ DeCesare, a longtime retro speedrunner who's like he's been featured in many GDQs. He does fantastic runs, and he apparently carries with him a curse of causing hardware to fail,
Mm.
like a notorious curse. But he came up to me at the check-in desk after the like hours later, and he's like, I just saw that the Marble Madness segment took 16 minutes. What happened? Like
Mm.
he thought something had gone like horribly wrong and we had to like redo stuff. I'm like, no, everything's fine. The
Mhm.
donation tracker went down and that's the first 6 minutes. And then we did a run, and then I actually got to do a bonus run, and it was so cool.
Mhm.
But it's just like I love the interpretation of like, oh, it took forever. Something must have gone like, how does a Marble Madness run take 16 minutes?
Mhm.
um, but yeah, so like it was just a top tier moment for me, like very, very, very rewarding. And yeah, and we also did a second nest block at that
Mhm.
event. And that nest block was also really fun. And previously, he used to go by. Oh, now I can't remember. I can't remember his old handle. But it's a guy, hard made easy. But he used to be. Oh, that stinks. I'm really annoyed that I can't remember his old handle. But like, there's a speedrunner who used to be like a professional tier Guitar Hero player
Mm.
that that I remembered watching videos of his like 10 years ago. Um then I saw him at the event. I'm like, wait, you're that
Mhm.
guy. He did a two-player, one controller Metal Storm run,
Mm.
and then in the second nest block, and he was not sober, and it
Oh.
was very funny.
Well.
So that's like what one of my my immediate memory of that event. Like, as enemy wasn't at this event, so Elrock and I kind of took the reins for it and kind of ran with the whole event. And yeah, he did an amazing job despite despite it all. Like, it was just very, 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 very entertaining. Yeah, it's gonna bother me until I figure out what his name was, like, because there's no excuse for me not remembering. But yeah, um, so that GDQ again was a much, much better experience than what I could have possibly anticipated.
Mhm.
Because again, I already was expecting and hoping that it was going to be a lot of fun,
Mhm.
and then it was so much fun, like I couldn't even fathom
Mhm.
having more fun than that ever. So, but yeah, so that was that plants us kind of in the middle of 2019, and then very shortly after that, I come home from SGDQ and I resume my grind. The
Mhm.
Cove. There we go. The Cove.
Oh, okay.
I had to go digging.
Mhm.
Like the underscore Cove, KOV. That was the name that I recognized from like the old Guitar Hero videos. But he's now hard made easy. Like, but yeah, I came back from SGDQ 2019, and I was like, well, it's I guess it's time to finish this grind. Like, the grind that I started, I was still because now I'm like within a second of the Marble Madness world record. I'm like, that's literally the only thing I can do. That's
Mhm.
like, I have to go and see if I can do this now. And then yeah, in August of 2019, I think it was August 6th of 2019, I got the first ever 240 in Marble Madness.
Mhm.
The 240.883. Um, and yeah, I mean, that was just like, again, I go. This was three separate grinds to get down to this point. I never would have really considered that I could have ever achieved a time that low. Like, even like when I got 245 and the record was 243, I'm like, that doesn't seem reasonable.
Mhm.
And then when I got 243 and the record was 241, I'm like, that doesn't seem reasonable. But then, so it wasn't born out of like, I'm gonna go get that world record, not until like the very, very end. Like, the initial onset for it was like, I'm gonna grind because this is my GDQ run. Like, I
Mhm.
want to be as fresh as I possibly can be. I know how easy it is uh for my consistency to just kind of taper off if I take too much time off, and I'm thinking about doing crappy co-op runs at AGDQ 2018 in the practice room, and I'm just like, that's not going to happen, because I am going to play this like every day for months, and I'm going to be ready to go, and my thumb's not going to hurt, and everything's going to be fine. And it was. And it was pretty amazing.
Mhm.
um, so yeah, and then at that point, as a funny aside, the next speedrun that I did after that was the only speedrun I've ever done offline.
Mm.
Like, I the only speedrun that I've ever done that I never streamed, which was there's an NES game called The Last Ninja,
Mm.
that is pretty jank but really fun, and it's got some good tunes. It was born out of I was in a fantasy football league with a bunch of other NES streamers,
Mm-hmm.
just for fun. Like I wasn't even really paying much attention to football at that point, but I was like, I know enough to fumble my way through a fantasy football league, so I'll just do it to try to just as a method for hanging out and having fun. And also, if they had an odd number of people, I could even out the numbers and everything would be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we had decided after like between seasons, because basically you every the beginning of every season you take the entire professional football roster and you just draft teams. But we were trying to figure out a way to determine who got to pick first, who got to pick second, who got to pick third, and we're like, well, we're speedrunners.
Mm-hmm.
Surely we can figure out a fun way to do this. And it was decided that whoever won the league previously could pick a game. A game, the only qualifier is they're not allowed to already have the world record in it. They
Mm-hmm.
just pick a game, and then everybody has between that moment and the day of the draft to speedrun the game, and our times are the draft order.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, that's super fun. That was like really neat, but like I didn't feel like streaming it because it was like, I don't know. I had this weird because I was doing marble stuff, and I was like, I didn't want to derail what I was working on stream with doing something off stream or doing a different game. So I just like did it offline.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I have it. I believe it's still a top 10 time in the Last Ninja, but I think people have only watched me play through the game once. And I got the first pick in the draft, and it didn't matter. I still sucked.
Well, at least you got to run that game, I guess. Except,
Yeah, yeah, it was a fun experience. Like I
okay,
have an
good.
appreciation for that game.
I didn't
The
know how
game,
bad the speedrun was or not.
yeah, it's jank, but it actually is. It's a lot of fun.
Okay.
I actually that's a game that I would recommend people pick up and give it a try. It's pretty strange, but
Is that
it's
game with like the ninja always in the corner, like his face?
yes,
Okay, I remember from like some Big 20, probably.
yeah. It's the game is charming. I'll
Hmm.
call it that. I think it's very charming, but it is pretty jank. So
I think the angry video game nerd would have other words for it. I believe there's a video on it.
I don't doubt it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't doubt it one bit.
Yeah,
After
it's
that,
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. After that, we had what we didn't know at the time was going to be the last, as of now, the last installation of NLSS in
Hmm.
the fall of 2019. Yeah, but nobody really knew that co-op or not co-op that COVID wrong
Mm-hmm.
co. Wow,
Mm.
what a different choice of words I had right there. Um, Nobody knew that COVID was coming, so we did the fall 2019 event, and again, it was still like, with RGL. We had lots of people come. It was a super neat, like, comfortable environment that people were like really, really dug. And I still to this day get pings from folks like asking if we're ever going to pick it back up again, like
Mm-hmm.
years later, because they just had such a good time doing it. But yeah, that was we did the last one of those. And so I see now why I said co-op, because it was right around that time that my brother and I started doing co-op streams.
Mm.
We started to do like monthly co-op streams because like we used to be a league bowler, and that was like one of the only time that I would really see my brother, even though we only live one town away from each other. Like we'd meet up every Thursday because we were on the same team in the same league and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't care about bowling anymore. So it's like legitimately, I would rather quit bowling and have you come over once a month for a co-op stream. That way we still get to hang out and we still get to like do stuff together. But I'd
Mm-hmm.
rather do that because we both like streaming and we both like playing games. We should do that instead.
Mm-hmm.
So we did. And then like we're actually I think we were at that time we were still in a league as well, but then COVID shut that league down and I just never looked back.
Mm-hmm.
I know several friends of mine that are bowlers that were like, oh, they couldn't wait to get back on the lanes as soon as the restrictions were dropped, and I'm like, I don't miss it one bit.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't touched a bowling ball in 3 years now, and I'm better off for it. I don't I don't care to ever go
The only
back.
ball you want are marbles.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Just marbles, please.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so at that point with
Mm.
that's true as well. Yeah, like, yeah. Lady L's brings up a good point that some of the clientele for the league that I was in, these are people that I would not typically care to be around.
Mm.
except for my brother, of course. So it's like it's better for me as well to just not be around those people. So not the best folks in that building. So
Mm.
all the better for it for that reason as well. Um, so yeah, so at this point now we're getting into like 2020, like early 2020. I didn't attend AGDQ 2020, so it's the first AGDQ I didn't attend in 4 years, because it was in Florida, and it was like I can't drive there.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just been to the previous two GDQs. Like I went to AGDQ 2019, had like the horrible work related experience there, and you know
Mm-hmm.
got the family was on board for me going away for the summer as well for a week. But like, and then with this one coming up, and it's like we're gonna take this one off to kind of like counterbalance everything because it's like just reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really been in a position where I felt like I could take 2 weeks out of every year to just like, for lack of a better term, ditch my family. Like that's not, like we once a year is enough for sure. I think,
Mm-hmm.
and and I'm not saying that like that's my perspective on it. I'm not saying that like I'm getting any sort of like um that's true. That is true. Yeah, everybody needs a vacation sometimes, but it's just like I want to make sure that it's clear that like my perspective on it is like two would be too much.
Mm-hmm.
So, but one is good every now and again. So yeah, so I didn't go to AGDQ 2020. It looked like it was a lot of fun. I think LRock took over the Nest block for
Yeah, it
2020
was
for
definitely
AGDQ. So
there. I
yeah,
remember having a horrible Mario co-op run, like just for everyone. It was
yeah,
so horrible, but funny, so it made up
mhm,
for it. But yeah,
right.
there was like a whole corner, like they got a whole setup. They had two TVs.
Nice.
It was pretty good from what I
Yeah,
remember.
well, I know when we did the second Nest block for SGDQ 2019, like we made more of an effort to coordinate with GDQ so that
Mm-hmm.
everything made sense. Like,
Okay.
so, for I remember like going and talking to staff and going and talking to folks at World 9 Gaming and making sure that everybody was okay. And like, I'm gonna do this thing at those two TVs over there. I need to move one of your PCs over there. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because like I don't like I still don't have like a laptop that I can use. Like, I'm gonna use one of your PCs and capture everything. I'll put all the software on so that I can record everything. I'll put all the VODs on a thumb drive. I'll uninstall everything and I'll put the machine back when I'm done. Okay, okay, good. And they're
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, that's fine. So yeah, so I think taking a cue off of that, like then you have like L Rock running the AGQ 2021, and like now like he's definitely got the vibe for how we can like the best way to set it all up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think still to this day he still has some of my hardware from that because again the pandemic happened. I haven't
Mm-hmm.
had a chance to see folks in several years now, so it's
Yeah.
like there's no. I'm not exactly in a hurry for him to like ship me cables, so yeah, it's fine. You just hold on to him.
Mm-hmm.
But it's okay because I'll get to see him in 2 months, so that'll be all right.
Yeah.
um,
SGDQ,
yeah,
where
SGDQ
it's back.
2023. So yeah, um, so 2020, uh, I didn't attend AGDQ, and I was at that point where, I had decided that I was gonna kind of go back over some runs with a fine tooth comb, and just be like, oh look, I have a lot of different games that for whatever reason, whether I was like shifting to prepare for a marathon or like organizing an LSS or goodness knows what else, that I would kind of give up on a grind of a game before achieving like a target time that I was after. Um, so, you know, I just started going back through my old speedruns and started trying to get goal times. And one of the first ones I picked up was Super Mario Bros.
Hmm.
In late 2020, like early late 20 or not late 20, early 2020. Um, and I have a note here because I said like right here I say SMB1 sub 5 with the GTA despawn.
Yeah.
So like this is I figured I wanted to bring this one up in particular because it has meaning for both of us to some degree. That you found a specific frame rule in 8-2 where the piranha plant in the tall pipe after the long pit just doesn't spawn.
Well, I didn't find that frame rule because with that one you just run straight to the right and it just happens to do it. I found the despawn at all. Like it
Oh,
wasn't
okay.
known about. I accidentally found it on a different frame rule when I was messing around with fast excels, and it happened.
Gotcha.
And I wish I could explain how it happens because it like is almost so unbelievable it doesn't make sense. Because obviously it's like a sprite overload, so it doesn't spawn it. But in order
Yeah.
for that to happen, like when a bullet shoots or something, it'll like appear in a cannon for a frame, and if it can't shoot for some reason or another, it won't, and it'll disappear the next frame. And like two of those need to happen on the same frame, on the frame the plant tries to spawn or something. I'm probably
Yeah.
explaining this wrong. There are testers that know exactly, but it's something ridiculous. And the fact that it can happen just from running right normally on a frame rule at all is insane. I forget who found that frame rule in particular, but I did find the despawn at all. That wasn't known about until I somehow like it just didn't show up and I was like, "Oh, that's weird. Oh, this never happened before. How interesting."
Yeah. So yeah, so like when I came back to SMB1, again, wanting to get that rite of passage sub 5 that I had always been like fixated on back in, again, literally in like mid 2018, and now
Mhm.
here I've left the run alone for the better part of a year and a half and hadn't touched back on it yet. Or no, 2.5. It was 2017. It
Mhm.
was mid 2017 where I got 5 flat .239. And I was like someday, and then someday was like 30 months later. It was like, oh, how about now? Where I reached out to some Wes
Mm.
and I was like, okay, hey, how much of an offset do I need in order to hit this frame rule with the plant despawn? He's like, hold on, 31 and a half seconds. I'm like, cool.
Yep. Perfect.
Perfect. So I set my timer for I think what ended up I think it might have been 31.8 or something like that initially.
Mhm.
Um, but then what came to the fore was my own inconsistent play because I have a sub 5 now, spoilers, but I
Mhm.
don't feel like I'm any good at the game at
Mm.
all. Like I'm on a rail, I can do the things I need to do, but if I'm ever off the rail, I am dead.
Mm.
So, like and that was what I was attempting to achieve, as is plainly obvious by like I'm going to try to hit this one frame rule in 8-2
Mhm.
because I just can't do the sequence of jumps very well. The only way around it is to make one of the really hard jumps a little bit easier. It's not like it makes it that much easier.
Mm.
I
It's
feel like I've
a significant difference. What I find it screws up is like the movement after the jump because Mario's like in a different position. Now, if you practice it, it's different. But for like me, where I'm not used to that, it throw me off.
gotcha. Yeah. So I mean, again, like so from my perspective, it's like I'll take like here is a small advantage
Mhm.
for a game that I don't really feel like I'm great at. Um, I'll take it. Yeah,
Mhm.
literally, I'll take anything. So it's we got into this really weird sequence of like six. I think it took me about 6 weeks to get that last frame rule, something like that. And like it's like this is where on my stream, uh, one of the first ever like user based commands came from. I have a yawn counter on my stream now
Mm.
because it was just like I make a mistake, like I mess up the underground in 1-1. It's like, all right, well, time to wait another 30 seconds before I can try again. I'm
Mhm.
just like sitting there pressing select to switch from one player to two player and back so that the demo doesn't run,
Mhm.
and just I'm so tired. Like I'm just like, and then I started yawning a lot because I'm just like have this like inexplicable like decent amount of downtime between each attempt. And it's like I can't just go. Like I
Mhm.
used to be able to just like reset and go and try again, and I have to wait. This is just like a funny aside. It was
Mhm.
like one of the first things where like it became uh really it's one of the first things that really came into like more of the community aspect of my own stream, where it's like it kind of came before me doing silly stuff with my hair and singing and what have you, putting combs in my hair and whatever, all that other stuff. This is one of the first things that happened, which is like, oh well, um some sort of user interaction or like viewer interaction, because I literally talk to people. I'm happy to
Mhm.
have conversations with people, but for the better part of the first 4 years that I streamed, it was all about the game.
Mhm.
all about the like I'm here as well, but the game's over there. Let's all focus on the game, and I'm gonna grind and hopefully post really good times, and that's the pull. So now all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe there's some other funny stuff I can do as well. As what happened as time went on, like I did the last time I got my haircut was uh September of 2019. I've never had long hair before, but like the pandemic hit, and I was just like, I wonder what it'll look like if I let it grow out. And it just kind of became an entity unto itself.
That's what I'd call it.
Yeah. um. So yeah, and like it just kind of went from there. And I think I'm the family therapy pet. It's not untrue. Um. But yeah, it just kind of went from there to just like I want to make sure that I don't take full credit for some of these ideas because I'm gonna quote my friend, a fellow streamer named I think it was Zexy, so it's XEXZY, who like I was watching a stream, I was in somebody else's stream along with him, and he joked that I should like pull something out of my hair on stream for fun, and like that became like a nightly thing where it's like, well, once per night I'll pull something out of my hair. The one regret I have for that, because I've been doing that for probably about 2 years now, is that I've never kept track of the things I pulled out of my hair.
Mm.
So it's like it's all kind of got to go by memory of like, no, I did that one already. No, I did that one. Then it's just like, I wish I had a list of all the different things, but I don't. I have all the local VODs, but I'll be damned if I'm going to go and watch 2 years of VODs
Mm-hmm.
just to find the part where I was pulling stuff out of my hair. But yeah, it's like, for somebody who is like, I'm an accountant by trade, so like record keeping is something that I have to do a lot of. So I like, will always be like very mad that I didn't do the appropriate amount of record keeping with
Mm-hmm.
that particular thing. Hey, there's a raid. Hi,
Hey.
raiders.
Hello. Thank you.
So yeah, so like I spent the early part of 2020 like kind of going back over games like at SMB 1 sub 5. I
Mm-hmm.
got sub 24 in Kid Icarus somehow.
Hmm.
I almost choked that away. Like I got a low 52. I had learned the Guardian Legend, which is another fun game where it's like part open worldy type of Zelda game and then part shmup, which is just like an interesting combination. But I posted a decent time in that. And I had also learned like the first my friend Von Yvonne, who's a fellow RGL TV member. He's a Final Fantasy IV speedrunner, and at my request, he taught me the first hour of the run, like where you get up to the point where the main character becomes a paladin, and that's like a separate speedrun category. Is make Cecil a paladin. There's a separate category for that.
Mm-hmm.
So he taught me that first hour, and then like this year came 2020 came around, and I was like, hey, can you teach me the second hour of the run, because there's another, you can actually make it to the end of the game with some like really wild glitches. um if you if you like, you can just glitch the game out and like kind of skip the entire like second half of the run and just show up at the final boss
Mm-hmm.
with an ability that one shots the final boss that you're not supposed to have. So he taught me that second hour, and so I learned that, and I grinded to get like a sub 2 hour time in that game, and just kind of like going back over. I wanted to get times that I like felt better about, just
Mm-hmm.
kind of like not wanting to abandon projects, except for projects like Super Pitfall. Still never playing that game again. And then at that point, like it got to like the summer of 2020, and I was approached by GDQ of all things, because it was the 10-year anniversary of CGDQ, and they were trying to do their best to recreate the original CGDQ schedule with
Mm.
current runners of games.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, we can't help but notice that you did that 1P2C marbles run for us. There was a marble co-op run in the originals in the CGDQ. It was I think it was MTI and Andrew G.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they're like, would you be willing to do the 1P2C run as a way of reprising that co-op run? I'm like, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also reached out separately because they're like, oh, like this is gonna sound weird, but one of the games that was originally on the CGDQ schedule and then like the runner just didn't show up is Super Tennis. I'm like, what?
Hmm.
Like somebody was gonna run Super Tennis for CGDQ? Like, yeah, and then they just never turned up. So like, do you have any idea of what you could do to try to show off the game? Just like show the game a little bit. I'm like, sure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I could put in like a really long password and just go to the final guy and beat him. It'll be fun. So I
Mm-hmm.
got to run 2 games like online for the CGDQ reprise, which was kind of neat and like really unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was around shortly after that, or like during the pandemic segment there, as it kind of kicked off. I uh, was became friends through the stream with my friend Will Bobsled, who's now the world record holder in pretty much every category of River City Ransom.
Mm-hmm.
It's like going back to like the first game I ever speedran, because like he was tinkering, like he's done speedrunning before. Like he speedruns this amazing, like, I don't know if you've heard of the computer game XCOM.
Mm-mm.
Um
Well,
it's
kind of.
kind of, yeah, but like the menuing involved in this game
Mm.
is just wild, and like watching him speedrun that game, like it's hard to keep up with how fast he's moving and like what all the different functions. He's like basically he's selecting menus before they appear, sort of thing, and it's just like unfathomable speed and accuracy. It was just really really neat. But he was trying his hand at River City Ransom because it was his favorite NES game,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like comparing like screen for screen, doing comparisons of what he could do to like what I had done.
Mm-hmm.
Because at this point, I had like what was effectively like a dormant world record in River City Ransom. I had grinded it out in like September of 2017, and just like never came back to it essentially, because nobody had approached the time either. But
Mm-hmm.
he's like, yeah, I'm able to save like a couple frames here, a couple frames there, and I'm like, that's awesome. Like, keep me posted on your progress, like.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got his streaming set up together, and he started to grind, and he presented to us, um, boss fight optimizations. And in my head, I'm like, what do you mean boss fight optimizations? Like, you literally, if you have a chain, you just beat them up with the chain. If you
Mm-hmm.
have stone hands, you literally just punch them to death with stone hands. Like, what? It's like, no, but if you do this and like much more, potentially like slightly more complicated sequences that would make the guy die around sooner. At least like save 2 seconds here or 4 seconds there. And like, this is all really impressive. And
Mm-hmm.
he put together, um at that point, like his ability was like on par essentially. And so like he was posting like mid 6 minute times, the same as mine. And like we were both streaming essentially, and I took some of the strats that he had discovered, and I pushed the time down a total of 14 seconds, from like 6:38 to 6:24. But like it was intermittent, where like I believe like he posted a world record time, and then I took it back, and then he took it back, and then I took it back, and then
Mm-hmm.
um it was like we referred to it as the River City Renaissance,
Mm-hmm.
because it was like, oh, this like new strats out of the blue, and they're really good, and it's really effective, and it's just like it was just super neat to see somebody somebody else come to the game with that kind of love and care for it, and to just like be like, well, no, it can be better than this, and just take it and run with it. I got down to 6:24, and then I put it down again, because I was like, I got most of the new boss fights in it. I was like, that's good. I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty happy with that. But like, it's not. I'm not grinding this right now. I have other calls on my time and whatnot, and just like I'm not really in the mindset to focus on coming back to this game at this point. And
Mm-hmm.
then like over the course between then and now, like Will grinded the main category of RCR down for the rest of that year, and brought it all the way down to I think 606,
Mm.
which was just unfathomable. Like I remember, like it was only like 5 years ago when we were just suddenly getting to sub 7, and that felt amazingly fast. And now he's like on the verge of getting sub 6. It
Mm-hmm.
was just fascinating. Um, but yeah, so like but he went on, and he's carrying the torch for that game for sure,
Mm-hmm.
which is just really amazing. But at the same time, again, he was pretty new to the speedrunning scene, um, and with the pandemic forcing GDQ online, I was like, well, hey, we have an opportunity here, because the one thing that I haven't mentioned is that he lives in Australia.
Mm.
So, and I was like, well, we have an opportunity here potentially. Do you want to submit a race of River City Ransom for AGDQ 2021?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it would be like I explained, because I want to say that he was pretty new to like that side of like speedrunning for marathons and whatnot. So I was like, I think somewhat convinced. Like I was one of the people pitching to him to get a console because he did all this on emulator.
Mm-hmm.
Like he managed to get like a killer time on emulator, and I'm like, trust me, you're gonna notice the difference when you switch.
Mm-hmm.
But also, if you're interested in taking part in GDQ, with like we could do a race together, and but you do have to get a console. So like he made arrangements to get a console and get everything like set up properly. And but I'm like, and I feel bad like trying to compel you to spend money because there's a really good chance this run doesn't get in
Mm-hmm.
because like the GDQ is oversubscribed like tenfold. Like so, like for every hour of content that they put into the marathon, there were 10 hours of content that they had to say no to. So
Mm-hmm.
the chance of our little 10 minutes getting in, pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
But he did it anyway, and we did get the run in, and it
Mm-hmm.
was a whole lot of fun. It was super good. Another fellow RCR community member, Sayria Song, he did the commentary for us, and like apart from Will's own execution, I would say Say's commentary was the other best part.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of there.
No.
Another race that I didn't win. It was a difficult run for sure. The RNG and RCR can be pretty terrible sometimes, and
Mm-hmm.
I think it gave us both a little bit of a beating, but Will recovered from it better than I recovered from mine.
Mm-hmm.
So like he won the race. Say did amazing comms, and it was just a really fun run, um, which was really cool. The funny thing about it though was that like this, I kind of jumped from like mid to late 2020 to 2021, and I've kind of stepped over a really important thing that happened in that window of time, which is that in November of 2020, Lukuki found something in Marble Madness.
Mm-hmm.
So he was tinkering around with the game, and yeah, I think he like it's always neat to see what a different set of eyes on a game can do. Because he was looking at the final sequence in Marble Madness with the shifting platforms, and he's like, it doesn't. It's weird to me because like no matter how fast I go, I still have to wait a cycle for the last sequence of platforms, but it's so close. It's just like a frame or two off. Like
Mm-hmm.
you just barely can't make it. And he is just tinkering around based on upon his previous knowledge or like knowledge of other games and whatnot, and he just discovered that if you get to that exact spot and then pause the game right before the platform was due to despawn, when you unpause, it stays for a few extra frames. It
Mm-hmm.
delays the movement, and so you can pause and unpause, and you can still make the cycle. Which pausing the game takes at least 7/10 of a second, but then not waiting the cycle saves you almost 2 seconds. So the net, you save a whole second,
Mm-hmm.
and we're like, oh my gosh, like a
Mm-hmm.
whole second.
That's a huge
So
deal in that game.
yeah, like the game is like my PB at that point, which was the current world record, was 240. So like
Mm-hmm.
you mean we can actually do 239? Because that was something that 240 felt like a reach. I
Mm-hmm.
will admit, which is like kind of like patting my own back a little bit. Like it's just I felt like I had to do a lot to get to 240. And again, we were still only kind of talking about frame rules at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then the concept of going for 239 was just like, oh well, just do the same run you already did and then do this at the end. Um, was interesting because because of having a full second time save available, I was able to go back to the game and improve the world record by 2 frames, not even really being fully derusted, just like doing well enough to
Mm-hmm.
get to the 1 second time save and finally hit it in a run. But it was also in like again November of 2020, December of 2020, and I had the RCR run with Will coming up in January. So I was like, all right, I did a run with it in there. I saved a couple frames. I improved my time,
Mm-hmm.
but I have to put it down right now. I've got this GDQ run coming up. I really want to focus on that. Um, and so, but it was also at that time where weirdly, I know that because of the pandemic, a lot of folks' viewership numbers had started to spike up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like Takate had gotten partnered, and Supersonic had gotten partnered, and I was aware of the fact that for that week that I streamed Marble Madness, like I was pulling in like 20 people when I was
Mm-hmm.
normally pulling in like 5 to 10. So I was like, huh, that's interesting. I could pull up a DM conversation I had with some Wes
Mm-hmm.
at one point where I was like, well, if I ever think I could grind for partner, I should just do like one massive marble grind
Mm-hmm.
because I know I've seen it. That brings in better numbers than anything else I could do. So like I feel like if I could really try to push the limits of the game, that would be my only chance, realistically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I said that in November, like 2 months before I came back to the game. So literally that manifested in January of 2021. Like I did that GDQ run with Will in the morning, and like that night I was streaming Marble Madness. It was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
now it's time. It's time. Let's go. And I'm a very analytical person. Like I said, I'm an accountant. I stare at numbers all day long.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was looking at the channel analytics constantly. And I was like, taking some common sense analysis of my own and just kind of layering it on here. And like, well, there are some problems here if I actually think this is going to happen, or if I actually think I want to try to see if I can make it happen. Um, my streaming schedule doesn't work right
Mm-hmm.
for this. Not so much like the days, but the hours. And not even so much like the hours of the day, but the number of hours that I stream doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, well, because I started streaming Marble Madness and my numbers started to climb. And like every time you go to the achievements page and you see your average viewership, and it's like, oh, it's climbing. It's actually getting, it's not like miles away. Maybe it's a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
It's like half a mile away. Oh, that's interesting to see it go. But as I worked through, like I looked through the numbers, I'm like, I think the big problem here is that because then even in January, by the end of January, I was actually starting to get numbers that were like, I had viewership in the 70s. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, that's pretty amazing. But I'm streaming for 3 hours at a time, and it takes 1 hour to get there, and then I keep it for 2 hours. So the average across those three is not where I ended because I
Mm-hmm.
have this first hour where I'm basically, if it was like a natural trend, I'm basically averaging like 40 for that first hour.
Mm-hmm.
So literally the only solution to this is I have to go longer than 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to go deeper into the night. And courtesy of the pandemic, I suppose, I was working from home, so I could literally commit to. And I mean, I even told Lady Else at the time, like basically, I'm committing to like burning the candle at both ends for a little while just to see if I can make this work. So I extended, like I would normally stop streaming between like 12:30 and 1, and then suddenly by the end of January, I was streaming until 2:30 in the morning every night.
Jeez.
And then just rolling out of bed at like 8 to start working,
Mm.
and just like it looped, and I was just like looking at so that like brought my average up
Mm-hmm.
because it's just like get the viewership and maintain the view, just carry it into the night as far as you can go.
Mm-hmm.
um and so that was doing its own part there. um and then it was just a matter of it's not like it's not enough to just like I'm going to put in the hours, but it also had to be like compelling material.
Mm-hmm.
And I really couldn't get more compelling than this because at the same time the cookie skip came up, um some West had been playing the game anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So like he had been grinding his times down and he's a natural for this game as well. And like while I was preparing for my GDQ run for RCR with Will, West uh, took the Marble Madness world record with a slightly lower 240.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow, this is amazing. Like I'll be right there. Hold on 1 second. Let me do this GDQ run, and then I'll be right over. So we had
Hold.
this like, yeah, like it's like don't get too far away from me for a second.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had this window of time where like we would both stream constantly in the
Mm-hmm.
evening, and and even though I knew it wouldn't be a good thing for viewership necessarily, um, the we would constantly post like the multi Twitch link as our
Mm-hmm.
stream title because like if you want to watch both of us at the same time, like the multi Twitch doesn't count as a viewer. If you were watching me through there, I wouldn't count for the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But we were more focused on the grind and like the
Mm-hmm.
chase essentially because now 239 was available. We just had to go and take it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Lady Yells that happened after yeah. Um, so yeah, so like we were just grinding and grinding and grinding, and by the end of January, I managed to get the first 239. It was a 239.767,
Mm-hmm.
and like it just seemed like there was just a lot of buzz around the game. Like people were really into what Wes and I were doing right at that moment,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just like lightning in a bottle. It was just super neat.
Yeah.
Um, so then like early February came along and Wes got like a 239.383, I think it was. So like he took the world record back by like basically a full frame rule and change.
Mm-hmm.
And then he decided that like that was good for him. Like he was really happy with that run. He did all the things he wanted to do with that particular run. Then he put it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then I spent time grinding to chase him down, which took all of February and half of March.
Mm-hmm.
But all the while, I'm still streaming until 2:30 in the morning every night, and like my numbers are there. There was one day in like late January where like I went live, and like 2 minutes after I went live, Cool Kid rated me with like 900 people, and like a lot of them clicked over apparently. So like I had looking at my channel analytics, I had this like one really large peak amidst like my like steadily progressing numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and because of that peak, I hit that 75 average on the achievements page. So it was like, oh, hey, here's the button. If you want to push the button, go ahead. And I'm like looking at the data and I'm like, I could push the button right now. And if I do, I can also predict what day they're going to reject me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I see that little peak. And as soon as that peak, because I'm looking at the numbers, like, as soon as that peak drops off, I go below 75.
Mm-hmm.
But the button's there. I've never had the button before. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of have to push the button because it's there, right? And then I push the button. um, and I had no concept for what the partner application was. I didn't realize how open ended it was. Like I don't know if you've ever seen the partner
No.
application, but I mean it's one question.
Oh.
Like basically, like, why do you think you should be a partner in so many words?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like like sell us on why your stream should be a partnered stream. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no form to fill. It's literally just like a paragraph. Like in as many words as you want to take, tell us why you think you should be a Twitch partner. It was like, what? I thought there'd be more to it than this, like some sort of guidance or something. But it's like
Yeah.
now I have to try to like sell myself to them, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so I mean, so what I did, I applied, and then on the exact day that I thought I would get rejected, I did. I got
Mm-hmm.
rejected. So I was like, okay, fair enough, because they're just doing it. Was probably automatic, frankly, because they
Yeah,
probably have
probably.
some sort of algorithm running in the background. Like, they drop below our threshold that we've published, so no thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, all right, that's fine. I just got to keep going. But then as I continued to grind, I became aware there was a project going on at work that I was going to have to be in the office for. Like it was a project that I had to run. It was just
Mm-hmm.
going to be too much to try to coordinate my team remotely. And it was again it was like April. It would have been like April 2021 when the project was going to kick off, and we have to like mask up, social distance, and everything to be allowed to go back in. But I was like begging to go back into the office at that point because I'm like, if you're gonna expect me to do this project remotely, it's gonna fail.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I'm gonna run into like serious problems. So and now in the back of my head, I'm like, there's an end to this.
Mm-hmm.
I can only stream this late for this much longer. So like basically I'm like I'm gonna keep an eye on my numbers. I'm gonna keep streaming, and if I can get my numbers back up to where I think they should be, I'll push the button again, but that'll probably be it.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't work out that time, then it was a nice thought, and I got close, but like life got in the way, and I
Mm-hmm.
can't do it. Because that's the other thing. The other thing about that average that's posted on the achievements page at Twitch, with regards to like the partner status, what they don't tell you is that once your calculation hits that 75, they don't do that math for you anymore ever again.
Mm.
So you hit the 75 and then it becomes like a check mark. Like it's like, hey, you did this part. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, well, what's my average? Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. So like I'm again like going to the channel analytics page and like just trying to do the math on my own of figuring out like what my average without raiders was, and just like look building formulas in Excel because most of my job revolves around building formulas in Excel. So I living in Excel,
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out what I need to do and looking for trends and looking for like the magical answer to the question of how do you crack this and get what you want out of it. And I the only bit of useful information I got out of it was never take a day off.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing about like, oh, you have better numbers on weekends versus weekdays, or you do better in this environment versus that. And it was literally just if you take a day off, the first day you come back, your numbers are lower than they were the
Mm-hmm.
last day, consecutive day you streamed. So take as few days off as humanly possible. That's it.
Mhm.
So like I would stream like 5 on 1 off, 6 on 1 off, and just like as much as I could. And then yeah, I got to like mid March, and on March 14th, I got 239.117. So I took the world record in Marble Madness back,
Mhm.
and it was like very probably like one of the most satisfying speed runs I've ever done. 'Cause I just hit everything I wanted to hit in that run. It felt super good all
Mhm.
the way through. And yeah, that next morning I looked at the numbers and I'm like, oh, not only is it like my average is like 78 for the last like 30 days, but if I didn't stream for a few days, it would actually go up, not down. Like I'm trending in the right direction.
Mhm.
So now it feels like the right time to push the button again. So I filled out the form again with a different statement of paragraphs this time, trying to be like, sometimes if they ask you to sell yourself, it's easy for you to oversell yourself, or like,
Mhm.
like I would like to think that I'm more on the humble side than I am on the showman selling
Mhm.
myself side. Like like Lady Els is effectively my stream manager,
Mhm.
because like she always does her best to try to make sure that I'm putting myself out there and like putting my best foot forward, and like like for lack of a better term, shaking it, because you got to shake what you've got in order to like and I'm just not that person traditionally.
Mhm.
So but she does a fantastic job of trying to help like motivate me and keep me going on these sorts of things. um so like I feel like I probably over egged it on the first submission. Yes, manager promoter. There you go. Yes, hologram. Yes. Yeah, there was a point in time where like she would show up on stream, but folks were convinced that she didn't actually exist. She was just a hologram. um, but yeah, so or like her arm would show up. Her
Mm.
arm would show up on the stream, but not the rest of her. So yeah, so like the day after I got the world record back, I applied. Yeah. And that I didn't. I only I told like Wes and Will, I think, that I applied the first time. I don't think and that obviously Lady Yells, but I didn't tell anybody else.
Mhm.
Um, the second application, which I submitted on the 15th, I actually tweeted out about it,
Mhm.
and like like lots of love and support from the community came in over Twitter, and like hoping everything worked out. And literally, Twitch approved it in one day, and it
Wow.
was just like, yeah, yeah, I know,
Wow.
right?
Wow.
Like so. But then, so you have to understand, like my own perspective from this whole thing was that I submitted on the 15th, they approved on the 16th. I didn't tell anybody that I applied the first time, so it literally just looked like I just applied for partner once, and they're like, yeah, sure.
Mhm.
So it's like I'm just trying to explain to people after the fact, like, no, this was my second application. I just didn't advertise the first one. Like, it's not,
Mhm.
because they're like, what did he solve it? Like, what's like, how did he do that? That doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
But it's also funny, like in the app and the wave after that of just like I couldn't even stream for a few days. That day, the 16th, I had gotten my first COVID vaccine,
Mm.
and it knocked me the heck out for
Mhm.
days. Like so the first, like I got back, like took an hour or two off from work to go to the center to get the vaccine. I come back home, and I'm like waiting for the side effects to kick in and just like knock me on my butt. And then
Mhm.
I see the notification pop up, and I'm like, oh, I got partnered. Oh
Mhm.
my gosh, I got part. And then like the adrenaline just like I just kind of kept me up above. Like I was
Mhm.
riding on adrenaline until like I finished my work day, and then I just like died
Mhm.
for 3 days. I wasn't even able to stream until like that Friday when I started to feel better, and then we just had a big celebration, and which was
Mhm.
funny in its own way, because like people were gifting subs left, right, and center. And it's an interesting thing about um a few, because like for partnership, you get like lots of emote slots potentially and whatnot depending on your sub points. But beyond that, it feels very much like um feels very much like affiliate stuff, except for the emotes and whatnot. There's not a lot of like
Mhm.
new things that you have access to. But one of the things you get access to is, if you're at 50 sub points, you can gift a lifetime subscription to somebody.
Mm.
But they have to not be subbed at the time you do it. So it's like, okay, I gifted a lifetime sub to my wife, to Lady Yells. And
Mhm.
then if you get to 250, you get to do another one. And because of all the gift subs, I got to 250. So I was trying to give that one to my brother, but it's like an email. It's not, you can't like click it and like activate it. So you have
Mhm.
to like send an email to Twitch staff and have them do it. So because of like the bevy of gift subs that were coming in, and because I'd already sent the email over, and he can't be subbed at the time they try to do it, otherwise it won't work. So like somebody would gift him a sub, and I would tell him to like cancel it because he can
Mhm.
cancel it and like make it go away because it might get processed. So like, but then he would be the only unsub person in like a sea of people with sub badges. He
Mhm.
got gifted like 3 subs that night. So I had to like put like a big banner at the bottom of the screen, like "Don't give Chester a sub."
Mhm.
Just trying to get people to not do it. It was just like it's become like a running joke on the stream. Like
Mhm.
don't gift the sub to Chester. Um,
He's got one forever.
now yeah, he now has his forever gift sub, which
Mhm.
is good. So, but it was just like a magical experience. Like, and like it's like if Lakuki hadn't found the Kooky skip, if Wes hadn't also been streaming marbles at the same time, if I hadn't been working from home, like it wouldn't
Mhm.
have happened.
If COVID
Absolutely
didn't
wouldn't have happened.
happen, yeah, there's a
Yeah,
lot
it's
of
one of
there's
those.
definitely a lot of factors.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where like I would not have ever expected that to be a thing,
Mhm.
and it became a thing. I don't know how it happened. I mean,
Mhm.
like there's a lot of people now that like their subs are in that like 18 to 24 month range. Where like I just like was it 3 days ago was my 2 year partner anniversary. So, but I have a lot of subs in that 18 to 24 month range where they weren't there before. They only know the stream that they walked into.
Mhm.
And I feel like, apart from some of like the more chat interaction than I used to do when I was just focused on the run, it's like by and large, like I haven't changed. Like it's still the same stream as far as like what NES speedruns. That's kind of what I do, you know. But every now and again, I'll show people the line graph because it's like a
Mhm.
line graph, like my history. 'Cause you can go into the channel analytics and it goes back a decent way,
Mhm.
and it's just like it's like 5 to 10 forever, and then like it does this tiny little hiccup as I like stream marbles for that 1 week and then
Mhm.
go back. Like literally I streamed marbles for a week and averaged like 20, 25, and then I streamed RCR to get ready for GDQ and I averaged like 5.
Mhm.
And then it's like so it's like a little hiccup and then a dip and then it just goes and it's
Mhm.
like I don't know what happened. I literally don't know what happened.
Marbles,
Like
people love
marbles,
it.
yeah. And it's just like like I went shortly after getting partner I pop into like into Bobby the
Mhm.
Blacktastic stream
Yep.
just to say hi and like wish him well. And he like stopped what he's doing. He's like, hold on, everybody. I want you to understand, like my man Yells just got partner playing Marble Madness. like of all the games that you could play, like
Mhm.
Marble Madness. It's just that it doesn't make any sense to me. But
Mhm.
again, super grateful for it,
Mhm.
100%. So like after that, I did like we had some celebratory stuff. I did there's a Lego behind me here
Mhm.
if I can show it. Of I'm probably spinning the wrong way actually. But there's a Lego of a Nintendo back here.
Like the
Um,
little Mario on the screen CRT
yeah, yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've seen that
I
one.
think I'm turning the wrong way. Yeah, wrong direction indeed. But yeah,
Mhm.
there's the CRT and the Nintendo back here
Mhm.
that I've never really done Lego stuff. Oh, now the mic too. Perfect.
You,
Looking at my actual camera. But yeah, like I've got the CRT and the Nintendo, and I built that on stream for fun as
mhm.
like sort of, to celebrate my birthday because Lady Yells got that for me for my birthday, and yeah, it was just like neat to do something different for a little bit. I like we said, I moved all the cameras and stuff over to our dining room table so that I had working space.
Mhm.
Like 9 hours to build, but it was super relaxing and a lot of fun. Just listen to music, and it was good. It was pretty cool. And like she got me a pennant up here that says "darn good party." And
Mhm.
so now every stream's a darn good party. And yeah, and then I did my first and potentially last, I don't know, ever like 24-hour stream,
Mm.
which that was an adventure. I decided to celebrate turning 40. I would do 40 speedruns back to back.
Oh my god.
And I had enough in the locker, if you like we consider like multiple categories of the same game, to
Mm-hmm.
be able to do 40 speedruns. And then I had like a incentives layered in at the end, right? Had 10 games kind of set off to the side, the games that I might get to someday that I'll try to do like a run if I like get certain like past certain like revenue thresholds, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
as like the prep for the event. Like everything counts, your bits count, resubbing counts, everything counts in like the month running up to it. And if we can get like every $100, I'll just add another game to the end of the schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And by the end of it, like 8 out of the 10 got added in. So I did my 40 speed runs, and then I ran like 8 more games when I was already like 25 hours into the stream.
Mm.
Like trying to get 100 lines in Tetris when all you want to do is sleep is it's an experience.
I'd say.
Um, but yeah, I mean that was a whole lot of fun, and but then at that after like as all that settled, the important thing that had come to my mind was that you know I wasn't actually done with my fourth Marble Madness grind.
Mm.
Like I had grinded down to 239.117. I had again was holding the world record for the time being. Um, and I was really happy with the run. Everything about it was great. The only problem with the run was that it was too close to 238.
Mm-hmm.
It was only 8 frames away from being a 238. And I'm like, that's not a lot of frames. A frame rule is 16. Like I literally just need to do what I did and save one more frame rule.
Mm-hmm.
Now when you think about how far we had come, like when I was at 243 trying to catch Spef, I ended up having to save like 9 frame rules to get
Mm-hmm.
down to there. And then when I came back from the 240, to get from the 240 down to the low 239, like the kooky skip was 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
That's 1.7. Like I saved 3 more frame rules in the time being. And so even though um I my sum of best only had 2 frame rules to choose from, I
Mm-hmm.
decided I was going to grind and try to get one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I always presented it as though there were three, because technically I'd say there are three. I don't think my silly race is optimized so much. Like my movement is really good, but there's definitely times to be saved if I could just do it a little bit cleaner, a little bit faster. But the
Mm-hmm.
silly skip at the end kind of like makes everything wonky. So it's difficult to like pin down specific frame rules for that race. So I was like, okay, well if I can get the task practice frame rule or save this intermediate frame rule that I save like once every 50 runs, or if I can get a new silly gold that I haven't gotten before, then we're in with a chance to get 238. And that grind took 6 months
Mm.
from mid March to the end of September. It was like 9,000 attempts. It was 81 streams. Um, just trying to get 238. And yeah, right, it was the same day that the Retro Runner took the Ninja Gaiden world record from Arcus. Um, that night I got the 238 Marble Madness. So it was like a great day for NES
Mm-hmm.
speedrunning.
Yep.
um, but yeah, so I ended up saving was like 8 frames or so on my previous. I had gotten one PB in between that was 1 frame rule ahead, and then I did the cookie skip, and it was just really slow.
Mm.
My movement to the finish line was slow, and it was a 239.050, and I was really mad.
Mm.
Like, so it saved like 4 frames when I needed 8.
Mm-hmm.
That's not enough. But yeah, so then I got in September of 2021, I got the 238.933, and at the present moment, I have no aspirations to go back to the game.
What else
Except,
is there to do?
yeah, but maybe to do because I have an unfinished project to try to beat the game blindfolded,
Mm.
which is just a lot to ask because it's timed.
Mm-hmm.
It would be one thing if there was no timer ticking down. If it's just and I no discredit like folks like Crystal Saver and like Jay Coper and folks I've seen people do blindfolded runs of like Zelda games and whatnot, and like it is and Bubsia is
Mm-hmm.
the big name in like the Mario scene and whatnot for doing blindfolded runs, and it's just they are incredible, but they also don't have a time constraint attached to them. And so for me, like I'm trying to map out blindfolded Marble Madness, and it's like, well, you have to take your time because you can't see to make certain turns at speed, but at some point you have to go fast. Otherwise, you're gonna run out of time.
Mm-hmm.
And also, wands don't make sound, which is the
Mm-hmm.
worst thing ever.
Yes.
So, I kind of like work has been rough for me the last couple of years. Um, so I was working on it for a while, but I had to explain to everybody that I had to put it down indefinitely because it was too stressful,
Mm-hmm.
and work was already stressful, and speedrunning is supposed to be my relief from stress, not an additional stress.
Mm-hmm.
So I have yet to come back to it, but I still that's the one unfinished project. Like you can see, like right behind me right here, I've got my blindfold that looks like red and blue marbles that cover my eyes on the shelf right back there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I will don it again at some point in the future. Just the time needs to work out.
We love to see it. You not seeing. That
Yeah.
is.
One of these days for sure. We'll definitely get back there.
Good.
I mean, that brings us to like 2022, where it was basically just doing random stuff. Yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
if you focus on a game for so long, you grind a game for so long, you eventually get to the point where you're just in between projects and just feel like you're just kind of puttering around,
Mm-hmm.
not really committing to any game, but like trying something out, but like not trying it for very long, and then you're like, yeah, that was okay, but it's not for me. Like
Mm-hmm.
you'll know. That's the only thing I can ever say for like having grinded a few games is that you'll know if the
Mm-hmm.
game or
Oh.
not. And so, like, I grinded some stuff for a while. We had the big to do with Marble Madness 2 being released, would be the ROM being dropped online after being, hidden away for 30 years.
Yep.
And like a couple of us, like myself and Ellipsis and Flannel Cat and Lukuki all tried our hands at it. And the game's fun. The game is really neat, but, it's really hard, as arcade games are wont to be.
Mm-hmm.
There's still a decent amount of room to optimize it, even with Lukuki's current world record. Although, like, he does his best to not leave much room for optimization. He's just a whiz for all this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like I'm hoping that that Ellipsis and I can showcase that at SGDQ this year. We did submit it, but we got the exception approved essentially to like if they accept it that we're allowed to emulate
Mm-hmm.
because how can we not? Only like 3 cabinets
You
exist in
can't.
the
Yeah.
entire world. Like so they were like, oh yeah, you can submit and we'll permit you to use MAME if you
Mm-hmm.
have to showcase the run. I'm like, cool. And then out of the blue, one other game grabbed me because I mentioned back in 2020, like my brother and I started doing co-op streams, and we've been like poking around at different co-op games. Like we've taken co-op records in a number of games because we just take a little bit of time to optimize certain things. We figure out who's stronger at doing what, and then we just ride that wave and figure it all out. Um, we were kind of between games ourselves, and he told me he wanted to try his hand at Gauntlet, and I was like, okay, well, so what I'll do is I will try to learn the route. I'll try to like just complete a run, one player, just so I'm not a complete waste of space when we do co-op. Literally the only impetus for me to do it was so that I wouldn't be like pathetically worthless when we were trying to play together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like there's a point in time, like middle of last year, I have one run on the one player board and it is last place by some distance. I just wanted to get a run done just to show that I knew what was going on. And we started working on a co-op, and like I really started to like the game, and then so did he, obviously, So like we would do the co-op runs, and then we would both go our separate ways, and we would individually stream any percent. The game has a ton of RNG, particularly the back half. That just you play as best as you can, and like the game will decide whether or not you have a good time or not at the
Mm-hmm.
end, and that's really all it comes down to. Because like there's it's a you get to these treasure rooms where there are 16 different exits, but only one of them is real, and you don't know which one it is, obviously. Otherwise, it would be much better that way.
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, like it was just like you just put good times through the third world and hope that the fourth and fifth world let you finish. He managed to get a world record in that,
Mm.
like that way, in like July, I think it was, or July or August of last year with like a 14-18, and I had joined the Gauntlet Discord along with him around that time, and I was like, man, I know this RNG is rough, but this game deserves a sub 14. Like there's a lot of good runners in here, like Guggen Sully and Bokenon Lives and Unos of Zelda fame. like lots of folks that are really good at this game, and like nobody could crack that sub 14. Like this game deserves a sub 14. And here, like, who am I? Like, I'm just like walking in. Like, I just started playing this game last month so that I wouldn't be awful at it for my brother's sake. But I think this game deserves better. Not that you guys aren't great. You're great, but like we should try to do more. um, and yeah, and so like I was streaming attempts. I started to get myself better at it and got into that the sub 15 area. So like I became one of like I got into the top 5. Like that was the 5th sub 15. Um and just grinding away, and then explaining like what the RNG is to the chat so that everybody knows why runs continuously die.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple different members of the community were just like hanging out in the background, like trying to look at memory watch, just trying to see if they could find something, because it's like, man, it really stinks that this is all locked away and you could perform so well and it doesn't really make any difference, and that kind of stinks. Um and it took 3 people, but they did figure it out,
Mm.
which was really cool. So one runner, Jesus the Frog, figured out what value is the value that determines where that random exit actually is. And he also figured out that when you pause the game, that value gets reset to a specific value.
Mm.
So it's like that alone is not enough, but it's something.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then another community member named Palm Factory figured out that if you pause the game, because once you get to an exit for like any normal level, you get to the exit, this little swirl animation as your character like vanishes into the exit essentially. If you pause the game on the swirl, then your not only does it reset that value back to that known value, but then it frame perfectly leaves that screen. So it
Mm.
lets that value advances by 1. Now the only problem, so that's really cool. You've finished the level and you're on a known value,
Mm-hmm.
but then there's another screen before the next level,
Oh.
and they figured out that like after like there's still one more like map that you have to dismiss before you get to where the exit actually is. So there's still one more piece,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where Yunos came in, and he figured out that like if you buffer an A press, that like you could use the A button to dismiss the map. He's like if you buffer the A press, um, during the previous level fade out and release it during the map fade in, it dismisses the map screen in exactly 2 frames.
Mm.
So you
So it's
put all that
consistent.
together, yeah, consistently. So like, okay, well now we know.
Mm-hmm.
So what proceeded to follow that was like a week's worth of like people like drawing maps and assigning like frame values to each of the exit locations and being like, yeah, what stuff can we manipulate? What stuff does it make sense to manipulate? Because again, just like with Marble Madness, you're adding a pause,
Mm-hmm.
which by itself is slow. So it's like, okay, well, how much time is too much time to set up the manipulation? Like what stuff.
Nope. It finally went out. Man, we had 3 good hours. Uh-oh. Oh. Hmm. I think my crashed my Discord or something.
Oh,
Oh, wait.
okay.
Oh, hi.
No, I'm still here. Sorry.
No, no, no. Well, we had 3 hours,
Yeah,
which was
that was
pretty
pretty
good,
good.
but yeah, there it was. I did call it.
Hey,
I knew it would happen.
it
So,
always does, right? So,
yep, it of course
um,
always does.
so yeah, so basically, what ended up happening was, like we figured out a way to manipulate the RNG out of the end game, because
Mhm.
the manipulation ended up being too time consuming for the early game when the exits were kind of easier to find anyway.
Mhm.
But the late game, it solved the late game. So
Yeah.
now, like all of us that had sub 15s, then proceeded to grind until we all got sub 14s. So like we all got it in the end.
Mhm.
It was really cool. I was in there like, hey, this game deserves a sub 14, and now 5 of us have it. And also over the course of like that like 4-month window, all 5 of us individually had the any percent world record at one point or another.
Mhm.
So it's just like this neat like kind of handoff as everybody's kind of getting used to the strats and executing a run and getting good early game RNG and just like polishing the run off. Um, so that's been like the biggest thing over like the tail end of 2022 is just like it was just Gauntlet. Gauntlet was like
Gauntlet.
I never would have thought that I would have ended up streaming like speedrunning Gauntlet, but
Mhm.
here we were, and it was like super fun and rewarding. And again, another great NES speedrunning community experience where we all kind of came together to solve the game as a
Mhm.
group. Um, and yeah, and so like that's now what we're looking forward to is like SGDQ 2023 is coming up. Like the games list comes out in like 2 weeks and 2 days from the time of this recording,
Mhm.
and like my brother and I have like Gauntlet co-op is the one that I want to see.
Mhm.
Like if I got to choose one game that gets in, like I don't care about anything else personally. I would just love to be able to run Gauntlet co-op with him because like it's just we'll get to showcase all the new stuff and because that's the other thing to trying to like round off the conversation, like this historical conversation, is that like my brother has been in the community since like 2005, 2006. Like he was watching CGDQ on stream as it happened. He went to GDQs back when it was at the 4-H, like back at the in those days. He's never had a run.
Mm.
Like he's submitted to like a lot of them. He's never gotten a run accepted. So like I just like I've got this like quest. I'm on a quest
Mhm.
to try to make sure that like but we got to get him on the stage running a game. Like he was on this like I can't speak for all of his experiences to know if he did comms for somebody else for other runs or whatever, but like he did commentary for my Magic Sword race with ProJN back in 2017. So not like he hasn't been on the stage per
Mhm.
se, but like I want him to be able to do a run on the
Mhm.
stage. Like that is what will give me the ultimate satisfaction at this point. So so
Mhm.
that's what I see coming. That's what I hope is coming. Hopefully.
Hopefully, indeed. That would be like the perfect, like full circle.
Yeah. Like just like the best thing I can do to try to give back to the person who ultimately got me into this in the first place, you know, is
Mhm.
uh is to see if we can get a run up there together. Um yeah, I just it would be an excellent way to round the story out.
Yeah, that does sound like a full-on story. It's
Yeah, I
really
think I
cool.
spent the so I've done like 2 YouTube videos that involved a lot of video editing in my lifetime.
Mhm.
There's one frame rule that nobody has in a run, like in an actual like PB in Marble Madness, that
Okay.
we just figured out on the aerial race. That um, it's hammer manipulation.
Mhm.
It was a relatively new concept. I spent like 40 hours putting a video together explaining that.
I do
um,
remember seeing that.
Yeah, that I published that in January of last year.
Mhm.
The thing I've spent the second most amount of time doing is our Gauntlet co-op submission video for SGDQ
Mm.
because I spent about 15 hours putting like the first 7 minutes of that video together, which just explains exit manipulation.
Mm.
So like I'm just like my fingers are crossed that I did a good enough job of introducing the game and like the topic at hand to show why. Because again, the whole concept behind GDQ is that unless a game is like top 5 popularity, like your SMBs and stuff, like
Mhm.
you need to have something new to bring to the table to get them to be interested.
Yep.
So like there has to be some sort of thing that hasn't been shown before. Like here we've got a thing. This is the biggest thing that's happened to Gauntlet in a long time. So like hopefully that's enough to get it over the line. So
Yeah, it's funny. You're making me realize why I've like never really been accepted to GDQ. I've been to one, but my submission videos are I give them my PB.
hmm
So
yeah,
I'm
and I
doing
mean,
it real wrong apparently.
well, so I mean, I'm aware of the fact that that works for some people, and
Mhm.
I don't know, and there could just be a lot more randomness than I give it credit for. But I will say, because now, I mean, I'm lucky enough. I have gotten 4 runs accepted to
Mhm.
GDQs over the years, and I got to do that one bonus run by just like convincing the right person at the right moment to give me 5 extra minutes of their time.
Mhm.
Um, but in all 4 of those cases, I had a script.
Mm-hmm.
I read the script. I like showed specific things on the submission video to like try to detail why this game's important, or like why a strat's important, or why you'd want to see this essentially. And like I've done that for all of them. I've done that for other runs too that still never got in,
Mm-hmm.
but like my success rate of getting a run into GDQ when I submit just my PB is 0.
Yeah.
And
I
my
think you're
success
onto
rate,
something.
yeah, my
I've been
success
doing
rate
it
when I do
wrong.
a little when I do a little bit more, my success rate is greater than 0. I'm not going to sit here and act like it's a high percentage,
Mm-mm.
because usually when I submit the GDQs, I take all 5 slots because I've run enough games over the years,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll take the time to at least try to put something together. But like, yeah, it's it it's not a good percentage, but it's higher than 0.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I've got.
No, yeah, I think I'll try to put more effort into it in the future because, yeah, I feel like people that put more effort into it should almost like deserve to do it more than someone that's just like, oh, here's my PB, please, I guess.
I think what they might be looking for, what I can only ever assume that they're looking for, is like, well, perhaps the submission is indicative of the type of commentary we should expect to get.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, okay, well, I think this is like, we know what we want to showcase, so
Yeah.
hopefully that means that they'll know that they're gonna put, you can trust that they're gonna put a lot of effort into showcasing that stuff. So, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I definitely leaned into the fact that my birthday is during the event this year.
I see.
So it's like, also my birthday is like on that Wednesday, so
So,
you should
it would be nice.
yeah, you might get some extra like happy birthday donations. Who knows?
I see. So we reach like present day of your timeline, pretty much.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, my hitchhiker's birthday. Yeah, I'll turn 42. I'll be
Mm,
the answer to life, the universe, and everything.
there you go.
But yeah, so we're at current day. And oddly enough, I'm back where I started. I'm grinding River City Ransom again. Because I finally came back around to that as a project of like, well, I'd like to improve my PB. I actually just did improve my PB a few days ago,
Mm.
and got a 619. Like Will's world record is 558.
Oh, so it is sub
It's
six now.
it is sub 6. He like streamed for like not straight through without sleeping, but he streamed like 66 straight days
Oh
of
my
just like
god.
throwing himself at that run and like just waiting for the RNG to give him something. And
My
like
god.
the 619 I got the other night was after like an hour and a half of not even getting good RNG for the first minute, like constantly just reset, not even getting to like my first split, just resetting, resetting,
Wow.
resetting, and everything's going horrible. And then it just let me through one time, and I'm like, oh sweet, like. And now he's got like lots of fun like challenge categories, because I mean like Will like just like really dissected the game fully. So like now there's like a category where you're not allowed to pick up any coins. There's a category where you're not allowed to buy anything, and so I'm like just like tinkering around now with like other like challenge runs.
Yeah.
Just kind of biding my time in its own way for the GDQ games list and hoping that there's something for me to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's where we are now. The fire is not gone. That's for
Mm-hmm.
sure. I've been speedrunning for a little over 7 years now, and it's still a lot of fun. It's still very rewarding. I still love spending time with the community, and yeah, the NES community in particular is still the best
Mm-hmm.
registered trademark. Like,
Hell yeah.
so it's just like still lots and lots of fun. Still a big part of my life, and a big contributor to happiness in my day to day life. If I'm not streaming, I'm usually like watching somebody stream. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just yeah, it's something I think I mentioned to you off the air before we went live. Yeah, it's something that I really feel like I'm willing to invest my emotions in,
Mm-hmm.
because they're my friends, and as
Yep.
opposed to like say watching a sport where like the win or loss really means literally nothing to me personally.
Oh gosh.
So invest your time. Oh, did we
Oh,
go out again?
ju- uh,
I'm
Discord did for like 2 seconds, but I don't think I went off completely, so I think we're good. I
okay.
just like
We're still
missed the
here.
first part of that
Like,
sentence.
so I started to badmouth sports, and I would just
Oh
cut.
yes.
It's like, no, you can't do that. But it's like, yeah, as
Why
opposed to
not?
like as opposed to rooting for a sports team, where it's like, it literally that there's not necessarily like the connection is manufactured,
Mm-hmm.
but like in this case, like rooting for a friend to get a PB in their game, like that's my friend. That's a person that I know who knows me.
There's an
Like I
emotional
have a good
connection that's meaningful.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have much more meaningful emotional connections. Like that I get a lot of my drive from just, you know, being on Twitch,
Mm-hmm.
being friends with people on Twitch, just supporting them, they support me, and it's just like this good, wholesome community. And I don't think any community does it better than the NES community. So,
Yeah, it's definitely all my favorite part of everything. Like, I wouldn't be here and go to events. Like, remember that I said this before in past interviews, but that tweet that was going around recently, like what speedrun pill you'd have with the different colors. I don't know.
oh yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
I don't remember what they were, but I do remember.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember, like, because you get to choose, like, basically, like, what your superpower is,
Like,
but then what your tragic flaw ends up being as a result as well,
yeah,
sort of
like,
thing.
well, I think it was all just positive. Like, would
Oh,
you
okay.
rather just have like 90% of the time the best possible RNG or uh I don't know, get 15 plus average viewers in an instant. It was stuff like that, but one was have your like costs for events be gone if you could just go to an event for zero cost. Easy. Easiest choice of my life.
Yeah,
That's what I care about more than anything.
just going and seeing my friends.
Yeah, the
Like,
community
perfect.
is easily the
Yeah.
best part. It's the drive behind everything, so I definitely understand the emotional attachment.
Absolutely.
Mhm. So, what about the future? Do you have future streaming speedrunning plans that
Um,
you know of,
well,
at
so like
least?
RCR, yeah, RCR is the going concern. Again,
Hmm.
obviously, if a run gets into SGDQ, then the focus will kind of shift over to that. And then from there, yeah, I mean, there's still like a handful of games. I've got a short list of games that I have wanted, or at least have had expressed interest in learning the speed runs of.
Hmm.
It's just a matter of like picking from that carefully curated list. Yeah, I do think like particularly now as I'm like rehashing like my very first speed run, and a lot of my like like I said, I've gotten four runs in
Hmm.
to GDQs, but that's three different games, and like most of my submissions this year are still those same games
Hmm.
essentially, with Gauntlet being like the one key exception there. So like from there, it's more like yeah, branching out a little bit, like trying some other games, and
Hmm.
like maybe even like dipping my toe into like a Genesis game or something. I don't know.
Mm.
Like there's yeah, it's the world is my oyster, so to speak.
Hmm.
So I have flashcards. I can pick and choose.
Plenty of games,
And
plenty of time.
yeah, lots and lots.
Hmm.
So yeah, who knows? So right now it's just RCR, lots of fun RCR categories, but
All right, well, I'll go. I guess we'll kind of wrap up a little bit, so I'll leave the chat room open for questions, and I'll try to come up with some I think of off the top of my head.
sure.
Uh, what's a game you like watching that you haven't run?
So games that I like watching that I haven't run, it's this kind of goes back to, in its own way, it kind of goes back to my childhood to a degree, because like because Chester, like, he grew up playing Dragon Warrior games, so like
Hmm.
as a result, like I've never really played them, but I love watching like speed runs of like Dragon Warrior, like the Dragon Warrior 4 in particular is the one that I remember watching him play a lot. So
Hmm.
like whenever I see if like a Natalu or Nessie are doing like Dragon Warrior 4 speed runs, like I'm in there. I'm
Hmm.
absolutely in there. Like I love like just have it on the background even. I love the music. I love everything about it. I can just listen to it all day. Um Likewise, like I can't say it for Final Fantasy 4 because I do speed run that one now, but like,
Hmm.
Final Fantasy 6 and Final Fantasy 7 are the other two of like my three favorite Final Fantasies personally.
Hmm.
So like, I could watch FF6 speedruns all day. I could watch FF7 speedruns all day. If I got to go back to my Darbian days and what got me into watching more of Twitch in the first place. SMB 1 any percent, I would watch it all day long, and I know now it's getting optimized to the point where it's almost difficult for people to run it without like
Mm.
it slowly driving them bonkers. I get that. So like you don't necessarily see as much of it anymore, and that's fair.
It's because
Like
Warpless is better. That's
yeah,
why. That's why.
that is
Definitely.
why. Yes.
Hmm.
Like, why warp when you could not
Warp
warp?
less.
Yeah, warp less and see more of the game.
Hmm.
Also, like I think the second game that I watched after watching my brother stream when I joined Twitch in the first place was Zelda 2.
Hmm.
So, like I like watching classic Zeldas, so like Zelda 1, Zelda 2, thanks to my brother. I watch a lot of Zelda 1 Randomizer because he's a fixture in the Zelda 1 Randomizer community. Like he's come in as, I believe, like he was a runner up in two different randomizer tournaments. So he's like definitely like in my eyes a big player over there. So, definitely watch those, like classic megas. You could go a long way with that. Like Mega Man 2,
Hmm.
I think, is the first game I ever beat.
Really?
Now,
That's a
yeah,
hard
I
one to
was
beat for the first one.
yeah, and I'll be honest, I was like probably like on the floor kicking and screaming and crying for the first 100 times I died on the final boss, but
Hmm.
as like a 10-year-old or whatever that had no patience for anything.
Hmm.
But I do have a distinct memory of actually finally beating that game. It's probably because like I don't really have a memory of beating games except for that one until the SNES era. It
Hmm.
was like when the SNES came out, and that was around the time that I seemed to suddenly become aware of, you know, oh, that's the pattern that enemy is doing. I should adjust myself to match that pattern instead of just like banging my head against the wall over and over again. So like, I have memories of beating Super Mario World. I have memories of beating Link to the Past, etc. So it's like, but I don't, apart from like Mega Man 2, like but the NES was in my household from like the time I was 6 until the time I was 10 as like the only console. And I don't have memories of beating like anything except for that one Mega Man 2 experience. And it was not a, I don't have a fond memory of it. I just have a memory of like finally overcoming.
Hmm.
But it's not like, so like, I think that's probably why I speedrun mostly NES games, like I said earlier, because it's like I have memories of being awful and I don't want to be awful anymore. Not
Hmm.
like I have memories of competency and I want to bring that back. So, but yeah, like so like classic megas, like great music, great movement.
Hmm.
Like I love watching them. Maybe someday I'll play them, but I can't hold myself to that because it seems daunting.
Yeah,
So
yeah, definitely. I've thought similarly. Well, I guess we can end it here. I'm not seeing any
yeah,
questions, and I'm kind of out of things to talk about. You talked about everything I would have ever cared to listen to, so.
yeah. There's like part of me was glad that I made sure to like. Yeah, I've watched several episodes of your speedrunner spotlight. I
Hmm.
made sure to come prepared because I'm not good at organizing my thoughts on the fly. So
Hmm.
it'd be much better if I was organized ahead of time. But yeah, I definitely feel like I probably answered a lot of questions before you got around to asking them. So,
No, hey, that makes my job easier, so I'm
but
not
yeah,
gonna complain.
thank you very much for having me on. I really do
Oh, thank you
appreciate
for
it.
being on. I really enjoyed listening to this one. Very fun. All
Awesome.
right, well, I guess yeah, I'll just end it here. Thanks for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, I stream these live every Sunday, so stay tuned for the future. And if you're here on Twitch, okay. Anyway, people are weird.
Twitch. Yep, good old Twitch.
And if you wanna be fucking weird, uh, you can watch them live.
uh, good
If
luck.
you want to not be weird and are watching live, you can and miss part of it. Subscribe to the YouTube and
Yeah.
watch it that way. See, you like your wife promoting all your stuff. It's inspiring me to promote my stuff, so I'm trying my best.
That's good. Yeah. No, share, subscribe
Like, share,
to
subscribe,
this YouTube video, this YouTube channel.
and also to what he's pointing at, which is all of his links on the stream.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's true. Also, very subtly, yeah, like also
Perfect.
follow all this stuff.
Now, while I'm thinking about it, what's that new feature?
The guest star thing or whatever, or is
No,
it
no, no.
or
There
no?
it,
Oh,
there it is.
the shout
The
out
shout
thing.
out
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah, that's new. I'm
Hey, cool.
remembering. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time.
Take care.
Bye bye.